A violent storm begins to pour over a massive battlefield as the armies clash under the lightning. A warrior in golden armor yells to kill Road, calling the boy a monster for using forbidden arts. Amidst the lightning in the sky, the imposing silhouette of a dragon emerges as the protagonist reveals his name is Road. He shows his hand wrapped in blue flames, indicating that he is indeed the monster everyone spoke of with such fear. A monstrous, skeletal creature rises in the middle of the storm, displaying Road's true dark power. With his back to the danger, the young man observes the chaos around him, knowing that the entire world sees him as a terrible threat. He reveals that he is feared for a very simple and direct reason that sets him apart from any other living mage. Road faces everyone, proudly revealing that he is the one and only most powerful necromancer in that world. Under his command, a gigantic legion of undead soldiers begins to advance ruthlessly. The horde of phantom knights charges, without hesitation, against the human soldiers, who watch the scene terrified. The desperate enemies keep screaming to kill the necromancer at all costs before it is too late. A mage conjures a powerful fire spell, stating that taboo magic should not exist in that world. A devastating shower of fiery meteors begins to fall directly toward where Road is standing. With complete calmness, the young man simply closes his eyes and lets his blue magical energy flow intensely. He decides to unleash his most mysterious forbidden spell, creating a colossal column of blue light that tears through the sky. Suddenly, a sweet and worried voice calls out to young Master Road, making his vision start to clear. Road opens his eyes and is met the beautiful maid named Lee, who stares at him with a confused and worried look. She confirms that it is really her and warns the young man that it is already time for him to go down for breakfast. Shocked, the boy touches the mirror as he notices a faint trace of blue magical energy on his own hands. He looks at his reflection and discovers in disbelief that somehow he managed to go back 20 years into the past. He remembers dying at the age of 32 in his past life and ending up reincarnating in that fantasy world. In that new life, he became the only necromancer capable of commanding billions of the undead with absolute sovereignty. The young man laments that he was about to test a forbidden spell that he hadn't fully mastered yet before being sent to the past. Leah rushes him, saying that if he is late, the lord of the house will certainly punish him severely again. Road gives her a gentle smile and apologizes, saying she can go ahead because he is already coming down. The maid is surprised to see her master smile and apologize, wondering if he really is the same cold and cowardly young master as always. He walks down the hallway, remembering that he was considered Baron Morris's spoiled, lazy, and hopeless youngest son. The young man recalls with pain how his entire family ended up dying tragically in the past without him being able to do anything. Despite having lost his entire cultivation level, he still keeps his necromancer memories and decides to change everyone's destiny. Road finally enters the luxurious dining room where his family is already gathered for the first meal of the day. Baron Shuro Morris stares at him seriously and asks if he is late again because he was making up excuses not to study. The boy pulls out a chair and apologizes to his father, calmly stating that he has no intention whatsoever of running away from his duties. He guarantees that he will not miss any classes from now on while observing his father's stern face, which he hadn't seen in years. Road wonders how such a disciplined family went bankrupt and swears that this time he will discover the whole truth behind the tragedy. His older brother Leo says that he cannot keep being lazy if he wants to have any chance of inheriting the Morris house. A young silver-haired girl asks Leo not to be so hard on the youngest, reminding him that he is the older brother. The affectionate sister Sif Morris offers food to the boy, who gets emotional seeing that she is still as kind as he remembered. He recalls that in the past she married to save the family and ended up being cruelly sacrificed to the demons by her allies. Suddenly, the firm sound of footsteps echoes through the hall, catching the attention of everyone at the dining table. The imposing Lady Della Morris appears on the scene and calls out Road for being late once again for the meal. Sif tries to protect her brother by telling their mother that it was her fault for keeping him up late teaching him magical theory. The mother tells Sif to stop immediately and tells her not to make up such pathetic excuses to cover for the youngest's mistakes. She warns that the family has no room for useless parasites and gives him a deadline of 1 week to master magic or be expelled. Sif is completely shocked and complains that 1 week is too little time since even the talented Leo took much longer to achieve it. Della says that Leo and Sif mastered magic very early and that Road is already 12 years old and is just a useless burden to the Morris clan. man. Unable to contest his mother's authority, Sif simply lowers her head sadly and accepts the reprimand in silence. Rode surprises everyone by accepting the one-week challenge, leaving his older sister desperate with his boldness. With a confident look, the boy asks what he will receive as a reward if he manages to accomplish the difficult task proposed by her. Della closes her eyes and calmly replies that if he succeeds, she will grant any wish the boy asks for. Rode accepts the deal on the spot and says that if he wins, he wants her official permission to enter the legendary Tome of Heroes. Baron Morris raises an eyebrow, intrigued by his youngest son's determination and boldness. The father agrees with the proposal, saying that if he really masters magic in a week, he will allow his entry into the tome. The mother stares at him with disdain, saying he should start packing his bags, because he has no chance of winning that challenge. Outside, Sif walks worriedly beside Rode, asking why he didn't apologize to avoid expulsion. She insists that his laziness angered their mother, and that even the genius Leo wouldn't be able to master mana in just 1 week. The young woman reveals that she has saved up her earnings to ensure a comfortable life for him outside of there and asks him to wait a moment. Seeing her worry, Rode gives an awkward smile and wonders why she can't have a little faith in him. He recognizes that if he hadn't reincarnated with his past memories, he too would find it impossible to pull off such a fantastic feat. Determined, the young man moves forward knowing that now is the exact moment to start acting to change his family's destiny. He remembers that the Tome of Heroes houses a legendary figure who would be perfect for him to summon as his undead servant. But for now, he decides he will have to make do with the boss monster that lives in the forest right behind the family castle. Soon the boy finds what he was looking for and locates the carcass of an imposing monster known as the Alpha Earth Destroyer. He realizes that the energy in his current body is still extremely weak, being only at the basic level of a mage apprentice. In that world, all magic classes are rigidly divided into 8 realms according to the amount of mana the mage has. Rode recalls that before reincarnating, he had already surpassed the legendary level, being widely known simply as the strongest. Even weakened, he knows that resurrecting that basic beginner-level monster will already be more than enough to impress his mother. He reaches out his hand and conjures his power, ordering the monster to awake from its eternal slumber and return to life as his loyal servant. Blue energy intensely surrounds the area as the creature's soul begins to rise under Rode's absolute command. The forest floor begins to crack violently due to the impressive magical pressure released by the resurrection ritual. A gigantic skeletal claw emerges, tearing through the earth with brute force and revealing the frightening presence of the reborn creature. The terrible skeletal monster roars deafeningly as it completely breaks free from its old grave in the forest. The colossal creature approaches the small boy, who watches it with complete calmness and without showing a hint of fear. The immense Earth Destroyer lowers its head, bowing with total respect and submission before its new Necromancer master. Rode stares at it with his eyes glowing in a mystic blue shade, knowing that the summoning process was a complete success. The details and abilities of the resurrected creature appear to the young man, revealing that it retains its powerful fire and earth attacks. As a necromancer, he can also use his servant's flames to simulate ordinary magic and thus easily prove his magical control. The young man makes a quick movement and fires a powerful blast of blue energy toward a nearby tree. The concentrated attack pierces the trunk with relentless ease, leaving a perfect hole and proving the effectiveness of his magic. Even the huge skeletal servant recognizes the boy's strength while Rode evaluates his own performance with satisfaction. He absorbs the monster back, knowing that for now his low magical energy only allows him to maintain one summoned creature at a time. Even so, the young man smiles confidently because he knows that level is already more than enough to silence his mother's demands. The protagonist focuses his goal on the Tome of Heroes, an ancient and sacred place that holds blessings from legendary warriors of the past. All the youths of the kingdom dream of entering there to impress the heroic souls and receive a power capable of changing their lives. He remembers that his brother Leo got one of these blessings, but Rode's true goal as a necromancer is much greater. He reveals with a sly smile that he doesn't just want a blessing, but rather to resurrect the powerful, forbidden entities sleeping in that place. The young man is brought back to reality when his sister shouts his name, running desperately through the castle courtyard. She pulls the boy's ear, asking angrily why he disappeared instead of waiting for her like she had asked moments ago. Sif asks him to stay quiet for a few days and promises to talk to their mother to try to reverse the youngest brother's expulsion. Road tells her not to worry and guarantees affectionately that he won't be expelled because he couldn't bear being away from her. Sif stares at him, surprised and moved by the maturity and sudden affection shown by her brother, who used to be so rebellious. The moment between the siblings is interrupted by Lee, who runs down the stairs to announce that the magic class is about to start. The boy asks the maid to lead the way, and she agrees excitedly, running ahead to take him to the classroom. Sif watches her brother walk away and decides she still needs to try begging their mother for mercy to ensure his safety. Road enters the castle's grand library, where other noble youths are already seated waiting for the lessons to begin. A snobby and provocative boy mocks Road, saying the good for nothing finally decided to show up now that he is about to be expelled. The other noble students start laughing out loud at the protagonist's face, enjoying the classmates' mean jokes. The experienced white-haired professor interrupts the commotion and warns severely that the class has started, telling Road to take a seat. Road walks calmly, remembering that in his past life he suffered daily humiliations for not being able to control his energy. He surprises the professor by making a polite bow, offering a sincere apology for being late right at the start of class. The old master Regu accepts the apologies, completely shocked, wondering what happened for the boy to act so politely. Road walks calmly toward his desk and sits down amidst everyone's surprised glances. The angry boy watches him out of the corner of his eye, whispering with disdain and calling the protagonist a hypocrite. Professor Regu begins to explain that mana is a powerful and mysterious force while magic is the way to use it. He details that mastering mana allows one to specialize in various classes such as mage, healer, and shadow assassin. The master continues saying that by learning magic, a youth becomes an apprentice and can rise up to the level of Archmage Sate. One of the female students raises her hand curiously and asks the professor about the mysterious and coveted legendary level. The professor explains that legendary figures are considered living myths because they accomplished grand feats marked in history. He laments that nowadays mages of this level only exist in legends, and that their kingdom hasn't produced a legendary one in 700 years. The master warns that noble youths must master mana before the age of 13 to secure their prominent place in society. Road's rival seizes the cue and points his finger, saying there seems to be only one person there who still hasn't mastered mana. He provokes Road, saying that the boy has been attending magic classes for 3 years and still remains without any progress. Unfazed, the protagonist replies that is none of his business and guarantees that he will master magic in just 1 week. The provocateur bursts into laughter and yells for the whole class to hear that the good for nothing Road is promising to learn magic in a week. The other students in the room also start whispering and laughing quietly, thinking Road's statement is a complete joke. The professor watches the scene disappointed, thinking that the boy is still the same spoiled and arrogant kid as always. Road thinks he would love to show his power right away, but knows that revealing everything on the first day would draw too much unnecessary attention. That same night under the starry sky, Sif decides to look for her mother in the castle's main hall to talk. Della calmly takes a sip of tea and asks what brought her daughter there so late at night. The young woman begs on her knees for her mother to have mercy and please not expel her younger brother from the Morris family. Irritated by her daughter's attitude, the mother slams her cup on the table and asks why she keeps insisting on defending a good for nothing. She proudly states that even in decline the family still has honor, and recalls that Leo and Sif mastered magic very early. Della says furiously that Road is already 12 years old, and that the Morris house is definitely not a shelter for talentless lazybones. With an authoritarian look, she ends the matter definitively, ordering Sif not to bring up this issue again. Sif lowers her head desolate, and wonders in anguish what they will do now in the face of such a difficult situation. 7 days pass, and the professor announces that the time has finally come to test the students' progress according to the family's request. He warns that everyone's relatives are watching from above and tells the youths to show the results of their efforts. From the window, Della complains that it is a waste of time to watch because she knows Road will embarrass himself while Sif maintains hope. Sif presses her hands against the glass, watching her brother down below and wondering apprehensively if he will really succeed. The usual provocateur celebrates, saying he waited anxiously for this day just to see the protagonist fail miserably. He steps forward arrogantly, calling Road trash trash and saying he will show him what real magic is. The youth boasts that he will be an elemental mage and conjures a fire spell, shooting a flaming blast straight ahead. The fireball flies through the air toward the target, demonstrating that he really has good control over the element. The spell hits the test stone slab dead on, leaving a very visible black burn mark on the surface. He turns around laughing and says Road will never reach that level, daring the boy to show the result of his training. Road calmly walks up to the test area under everyone's watchful eyes and announces that it is now his turn to play. A dark aura and the colossal silhouette of his skeletal servant begin to manifest discreetly behind the protagonist. He extends his arm toward the test slab, preparing to deliver the blow with complete focus and determination. The rival keeps mocking him with his friends, saying Road is just pretending and will soon start crying with shame. A noble gossip asks Della if it's true that she will expel the family's youngest if he fails today's test. Coldly, Della replies that a lazy person like him only brings shame to the clan, and that it would be much better if he left once and for all. Focused on his goal, the boy visualizes his servant and secretly activates the power of the Earth Destroyer in his magical attack. He conjures his servant's flame spell, releasing an immense amount of blue fire that surprises everyone in the courtyard. The boy decides to use a good dose of power, launching the blue flame blast with an impressive and destructive intensity. The rival watches the scene completely in shock, unable to understand how and when that good for nothing learned to use such strong magic. The powerful jet of blue fire hits the thick test stone slab with a devastating impact that makes the ground tremble slightly. To everyone's surprise and despair, the test stone slab simply shatters, entirely due to the absurd strength of the blow. Sif widens her eyes, extremely shocked and happy to realize that her younger brother actually managed to pull off the impossible. The other students are left speechless, commenting frightened that even the best in the class could never destroy that slab. The professor stares at the destruction perplexed, thinking that level of absurd strength could never be controlled by a mere apprentice. The rival falls into total despair, unable to accept that the guy he humiliated so much just conjured magic far superior to his. The noblewoman next to Dilla comments, laughing that apparently the lazy boy isn't as useless as she claimed. Sif points to the courtyard enthusiastically and yells for their mother to look, because Road managed to pass the test successfully. Down below, the protagonist just dusts off his clothes with complete calmness, as if that were no big deal. Sif waves happily out the window to celebrate her beloved younger brother's big victory on such a tense day. The angry rival shouts in revolt, demanding to know how a failure like him managed to use fire magic out of nowhere. He points his finger, accusing the protagonist of cheating since everyone knows Road used to skip magic classes. The crowd begins to whisper and agree that it's impossible for someone without talent to conjure such an advanced spell out of thin air. He accuses the protagonist of stealing a magical tool from the family treasury just to fake power and avoid being expelled. Road turns around slowly and asks, with a cold look, what exactly young Master Charlie Anta is trying to insinuate. Charlie explains while laughing that magical artifacts consume a lot of energy and bets that his rival could only cast that power once. Without paying attention to Charlie's provocations, the protagonist turns to Professor Ragu and asks what he thinks of all this. The master sighs and admits that although he is sorry, Charlie's accusation about using a hidden item actually makes sense. The other students begin to whisper in shock, wondering if Road would really be capable of stealing and cheating on the test. Watching everything, Sif is devastated, thinking that her younger brother refused her help precisely because he decided to steal the treasure. With her eyes full of tears, she laments that this cheating will only serve to make their parents even more disappointed and angry. Sif refuses to let the worst happen and decides she must intervene immediately to protect her younger brother at all costs. She runs toward the courtyard and shouts desperately, asking the professor please not to blame Road for what happened. To everyone's surprise, the young woman says that she was the one responsible for giving the magical artifact for her brother to use in the aptitude test. Before she can continue lying to take the blame, the protagonist grabs her firmly by the arm, stopping her from saying more. With a calm look, he asks his sister to let him handle the situation alone. While she watches him worried and uncomprehending, Road proposes to the professor that if he conjures the same fire spell again, it will prove once and for all that he didn't use items. The master agrees, saying that casting the power consecutively would be the definitive proof that the mana truly belongs to the boy. Road accepts the challenge with a confident smile and begins to concentrate his impressive dark energy around his body. The youths in the audience start breaking out in a cold sweat and exclaim in fright that the massive pressure released by the boy is simply overwhelming. With a quick movement, the protagonist fires another colossal blast of blue flames that explodes violently in the test courtyard. Charlie Anta watches the scene in despair, realizing horrified that the boy was indeed not using any stolen tools. The rival retreats tremblingly while staring at the display of strength, unable to believe the protagonist's absurd level of control. He is completely paralyzed with terror as sweat drips down his face in the face of the public humiliation he just suffered. Dust and pieces of rock from the massive destruction start falling across the courtyard, showing the devastating trail left by the spell. Charlie completely loses the strength in his legs and collapses sitting on the ground, terrified by the intimidating presence of his former rival. The other students watch him surprised and ask, with their jaws dropped, whether that powerful youth is really the weak boy from before. Sif turns victoriously to her mother and asks if she will now finally give up the absurd idea of banishing the family's youngest. Della looks away coldly, saying she will spare the boy just for now because lazy people still have no place in her house. Before everyone, Professor Rigyu shouts and officially declares that Rode passed the test without using any magical tools. The sun begins to set on the horizon, dyeing the sky in warm colors and bringing that day full of great surprises and twists to a close. Later in the castle corridor, Sif and their older brother Leo congratulate the protagonist on the great achievement accomplished in the courtyard. Rode thanks them and says he didn't expect Leo to know, but the brother reveals, laughing, that Sif wouldn't stop talking about it. The whole family gathers again around the large dining table, but this time the mood in the hall is visibly different. The Baron praises his youngest son, saying the professor told him everything, and stating proudly that the boy honored the family name. The boy thanks his father and subtly asks if the previous promise regarding the test reward still stands. The father guarantees he will keep his word and warns that the Tomb of Heroes will open in a month, promising to secure an exclusive spot for him. Della seriously warns that that spot will cost a lot and demands that he get a powerful blessing to make up for the clan's sacrifice. The Baron adds that from now on Rode will receive the same noble treatment as his siblings and expects him to train with dedication. With a polished and respectful gesture, the protagonist makes a slight bow, formally thanking his proud father for his support. Alone, Rode thinks that although ordinary blessings are useless to him, his necromancy will be the key to crowning him king inside the tome. He remembers an unnamed grave that holds the ashes of a legendary and powerful ancient warrior who will be his next great summoning. He knows that the legendary soul is almost fading away and that his current energy is still not strong enough to bring it back. However, he sees in the noble treatment promised by his father the perfect opportunity to elevate his power and train intensely. A month of intense training goes by, and Lee opens the bedroom door, announcing that the lord of the house wishes to meet with him immediately. Rode gets up confident, revealing that during this period he successfully leveled up, reaching the intermediate apprentice stage. The Baron announces that the tome opens today and tasks Leo with taking Rode there, explaining the rules and how the place works. Leo accepts the mission promptly and responds with respect, stating that he will guide his younger brother to the sacred place. Shortly after, a Morris family carriage travels at high speed down the dirt road surrounded by trees. Inside the carriage, Leo asks if the youngest knows the classifications of the blessings he can receive in the tome. Rode calmly replies that he is paying close attention to listen to his older brother's detailed explanations. Leo details that blessings are divided into 5 rarity levels, being white, blue, purple, gold, and red. Rode asks what blessing his brother obtained, and Leo humbly reveals that he received only a purple rarity 1. Rode is surprised, knowing that the purple blessing is incredibly rare, and understands why his brother stood out so much in the royal army. Sif praises Leo, reminding him that getting any blessing there is already very difficult, and that getting a purple one is almost impossible for most. Sif approaches the youngest and insists that he needs to secure at least a white blessing, since even the most basic ones are very rare. He asks her not to stress and thinks to himself, laughing, that if she knew he didn't want a blessing, she would certainly be furious. The carriage finally approaches the imposing entrance of the Tomb of Heroes, which is guarded by giant knight statues. The place is shrouded in mystery with statues of past heroes and headstones that stretch across the sanctuary's gloomy mist. Leo warns that Road will have exactly 3 hours inside to take the test and guarantees that he and Sif will wait outside. Sif watches the youngest enter through the grand gateway and quietly roots for him to get at least a simple white blessing. With her eyes shining with hope, the young woman stands firm, rooting from the bottom of her heart for her brother's success in that challenge. Road walks alone across the stone bridge, cutting through the vast cemetery surrounded by winged warrior statues and ancient headstones. The boy flashes a confident smile upon realizing he has finally gotten so close to achieving his true goal there. Road recalls the common tips to look first at the decorated tombs of famous archmages to get rarer blessings. However, he ignores the flashy monuments and keeps walking with firm steps toward the more isolated areas of the cemetery. The protagonist focuses his attention on a humble, unnamed grave. Knowing that a true legend forgotten by time rests there, he kneels before the humble tomb and asks for forgiveness from the soul resting there, guaranteeing he has no intention of offending it. The boy closes his eyes and begins to intensely focus his dark mana, preparing to start his forbidden summoning ritual. With his eyes glowing in blue, he authoritatively orders the hero of the past to wake from eternal slumber and bow before him. A strong gust of wind arises, and Road notices that the legendary warrior's soul is trying to resist his dark command. He warns furiously that all the undead of that world belong to him, claiming to be the greatest necromancer and the king of the dead. The imposing spirit of the legendary swordsman emerges wrapped in blue flames, confirming he is an extremely powerful class servant. Road stares at the summoned soul with a deep and threatening look, ordering with absolute coldness that it bow to his will. The powerful night spirit yields to the necromancer's immense pressure and kneels respectfully, greeting Road as its new master. The protagonist watches it closely and asks if the summoned spirit still manages to remember its old warrior name. The warrior admits that he forgot his own name due to time and humbly asks the young master to grant him a new moniker. Road flashes a satisfied smile at his new servant's total loyalty and decides that from now on he will give him a new name. The young man baptizes the legendary and powerful summoned swordsman with the imposing name of Boncrown Bladeseat, crowning their new alliance. Meanwhile, in another part of the tome, the sound of moving chains and firm footsteps begins to echo through the dark hallways. 3 people start exploring the sanctuary, being guided by a knight with a large sword resting on his broad shoulders. The bespectacled counselor tells young Eleanor of the prestigious Ashblade house that she will certainly manage to get a rare purple blessing. The guard suggests that the young woman look for the larger tomes because illustrious heroes of the past lie there who will guarantee great blessings. The determined and beautiful blue-haired Eleanor nods in agreement with her companion's tips and walks purposefully through the tome. Soon she comes across the imposing headstone of the great hero Els, which features an impressive angel statue with a sword. She watches it impressed, remembering that he was an extremely strong archmage who almost reached the legendary sage level. Eleanor hurries through the sanctuary, anxious to try to obtain the blessing of that powerful warrior of the past for herself. However, she breaks abruptly in fright upon noticing an intense and mysterious blue light emanating from an area just ahead of her. The guardian draws his weapon quickly and warns his mistress to be careful as he detected a terrible undead presence in the area. An immense explosion of energy and blue flames emerges out of nowhere before them, making the atmosphere even more tense and dangerous. Through the fire, they spot the silhouette of a boy, and Eleanor wonders confusedly whether that child is also there after blessings. The warrior points his sharp sword toward Road and asks harshly if the dark energy they felt came precisely from him. Upon analyzing Road, the experienced guard realizes that the small boy is a beginner magic swordsman and notes that he is unusual. He tells Eleanor to be very careful, warning that the place is taken over by dark mana and that the youth might be possessed by evil spirits. Without showing any concern about the threats, the protagonist simply keeps walking calmly toward the group. Road jokes with his new skeletal servant floating behind him, commenting that the guard called him a simple, vengeful spirit. Road calmly lowers his head and picks up a tree branch that was lying on the damp floor of the tome. The protagonist tests the weight of the branch and orders his new servant to deal with the guards standing before them with their weapons. The knight charges forward at high speed, unleashing a violent vertical strike with his massive sword imbued with electrical energy. To everyone's absolute shock, the greatsword is easily blocked with just the simple piece of wood that Rode is holding. With a quick and imperceptible movement, the protagonist counterattacks, sending the strong warrior flying away disarmed. Having fallen, the man stares at him in a cold sweat with wide eyes, unable to comprehend the absurd level of strength that boy possesses. Rode just observes him from beneath the shadows of his hood, maintaining an imposing posture without showing any effort at all. Elinor stands open-mouthed and in complete shock, unable to believe that her strong guardian was easily defeated by a boy using a branch. She watches him closely, noticing that he appears to be the same age as her, and wonders intrigued how he did that. Annoyed, she points her finger at Rode, demanding to know who he is and warning him that she belongs to the influential and powerful Ashblade family. Suddenly, the oldest man in the group harshly interrupts her, ordering the girl to bite her tongue immediately. Eleanor turns around startled, calling out to her grandfather without understanding why he is reprimanding her attitude so seriously. The protagonist simply watches their reaction in silence, remaining calm and without retreating a single inch. The elder analyzes Rode thoughtfully, recognizing that even he couldn't have defeated the guard with such ease and mastery. Leon kneels in shame and asks for permission to duel the boy again, insisting that he only made a silly mistake. With fury, the warrior stands up and charges once more, delivering a fast attack imbued with his electrical energy. Rode dodges the powerful attack with immense ease, moving like a true bolt of lightning across the cemetery courtyard. Once again, the metallic sound of a collision echoes as the protagonist blocks and completely nullifies the warrior's offensive. The intimidating presence of Rode and his skeletal servant appears like a suffocating shadow right behind the frightened knight. He points the branch directly at his opponent's throat and coldly warns that if he tries it again, he will be buried right there. The elder is shocked to realize there was no mana fluctuation and deduces with fright that the boy won using only pure swordsmanship. Perplexed and fearing for his man's life, the grandfather steps forward and desperately begs the young master to have mercy. He politely apologizes for his subordinate's arrogant behavior, lowering his head as a sign of total respect. The protagonist realizes the elder took his time to act on purpose, just to test his true strength during the combat with the guard. The old master turns furiously to his knight and immediately orders him to come and apologize to the victorious youth. Embarrassed, the man bows before Rode, asking for forgiveness for his insolence and assuring him that he had no intention of offending him. The knight thinks tremblingly that this was the first time he was defeated by someone using only basic swordsmanship, which is terrifying. The protagonist simply waves his hand, saying it is fine since he didn't get hurt, and tells them to forget what happened. The elder admits they were fools and praises Rode, calling him an advanced master swordsman, since defeating Leon requires a grandmaster level. Eleanor watches everything confused and shocked, not understanding how her grandfather can call a boy who looks her age a senior master. Rode responds modestly, saying he just got lucky, but mentally acknowledges that his servant Bladeseat was legendary in his prime. The friendly elder lets out a genuine laugh and praises the young man's great humility in the face of such an overwhelming and clean victory. He formally introduces himself as Igna Ashblade, the leader of his noble house, and introduces his beautiful granddaughter named Eleanor to the boy. Eleanor bows respectfully, offering sincere apologies for her arrogance and rude behavior toward the protagonist earlier. Igna politely asks if a prodigy like him is part of the royal court, confessing that he has never seen such a young master before. Rode asks to be called just Rode and reveals that he belongs to no faction, while remembering the great influence of their house. Igna thinks intrigued that he has never heard Rode's name, but gets excited to know that he is free and plans to bring him to his side. Eleanor approaches friendly and asks if he is the same age as her, and if he also came to the tome in search of some heroic blessing. Right after that, she turns red with shame and apologizes, laughing upon realizing she asked a silly question to someone as strong as him. Suddenly, her grandfather starts coughing violently in a painful way as a trail of black energy and blood drip from his mouth. Desperate, Eleanor and her guardian hold the elder, who is about to faint due to the terrible crisis that suddenly struck him. Rode watches him closely and calmly warns that the leader of the Ashblade family seems to be suffering under the effect of a terrible curse. The guardian begs anxiously to know if the protagonist knows how to help him, revealing that no healer in the kingdom has managed to discover a cure. Eleanor explains, crying, that her grandfather was ambushed by demons in battle decades ago, and that ever since, he has been suffering from this incurable illness. The boy says that explains everything, as it is an evil spirit demonic curse that very few people know how to treat. With tears in her eyes, the girl begs the protagonist to help them, asking if he also knows the method to cure her grandfather. She hugs her weakened grandfather with immense affection and desperation, silently pleading for any sign of hope to save him. Eleanor promises desperately that if Rode manages to save her grandfather's life, her influential family will agree to grant any wish the boy has. Rode thinks the elder is an admirable hero, and concludes excitedly that for a necromancer like him, removing that kind of curse is very simple. He approaches the group and states, with total conviction and calmness, that curing the leader of the Ashblade family will not be a difficult task. Eleanor and Leon break into a huge, hopeful smile, and ask emotionally if the protagonist is really serious. He confirms that he is, but explains that he will need some special items to manage to remove the curse completely. Eleanor cries with happiness, knowing that finally her beloved grandfather's terrible condition can be cured by the young man. Leon hands a magical communication artifact to Rode and asks him to get in touch at any time with whatever he needs. The warrior says he will come to pick him up personally as soon as he has everything ready and insists he use the device if he wants anything. Rode accepts the object calmly and ends the conversation politely, bidding a temporary farewell to the group. He walks back thinking that the trip was very profitable, but notes that Blade Seat's spirit only has 1% of its total strength. Even so, the young man smiles with confidence, assuring himself that with his help, the knight will return to the peak of his former power. Outside, Sif runs toward Rode with a very anxious look, wanting to know all the news right off the bat. She asks enthusiastically which her spirit blessed him inside, and what the rarity of the color of the power he received is. Rode sweats coldly upon realizing he completely forgot to make up an excuse, since he cannot reveal his forbidden summoning. Leo approaches him with a very serious look and coldly comments that strangely he cannot feel any blessing coming from his body. The older brother asks angrily what happened, remembering that the family spent a fortune to secure that spot for him. Leo rubs his face in disappointment and says he believed the youngest really had changed, but sees he remains the same failure as always. The boy pretends to find it funny, saying the souls didn't like him, but thinks that Blade Seat is much better than any useless blessing for him. Sif suggests sadly that they head home soon, hoping from the bottom of her heart that their mother won't be furious with the bad news. That same night, the furious scream of the Morris family matriarch echoes stridently through every corner of the immense castle. Della slams the table furiously and screams that, as expected, the useless youngest has proven once again to be complete trash, with no salvation for the family. She complains that the couple spent too much to get the spot in the tome, while Rode just listens in silence, so as not to make things worse. The mother says he should work hard like Leo, and orders him to go to the Magic Academy in a few days to stop embarrassing them there. She walks away, telling the boy not to return home, unless strictly necessary, as he ruined her appetite. The young man sees going to the academy as the perfect chance to get rare materials to upgrade his servant Blade Seat and level up fast. He remembers his childhood ex-fiancée Claire Morris, who broke off the arrangement because she thought him weak and ended up meeting a tragic end in his past life. He knows Claire has a difficult temperament and realizes his mother actually wants to use him as a servant to maintain the alliance with her family. However, the protagonist decides he doesn't care about that and swears he will change Claire's tragic destiny out of gratitude to her mother. 3 days later, the setting shifts to the large and famous Seven Cities Magic Academy, located in the northern region of that continent. The prestigious magic educational institution houses only young students coming from the most important noble families of the entire kingdom. The protagonist celebrates being far from home, knowing that there he will be able to use all his necromancer power to level up freely. Claire, the beautiful heiress of the important Flora family, walks with elegance through the local courtyard, catching the attention of everyone around her. The boys praise her passionately, commenting disappointedly that it's a pity she is already engaged, and wondering who the lucky guy could be. Oblivious to the students' chatter in the courtyard, Rode just observes the local movement calmly and carefree. Her Her advisor warns her that the Morris family sent the youngest to accompany her, and Claire spots him, glaring at him with total disdain. The advisor explains that even in decline, the Morris house has the promising Leo, and therefore Claire accepts the protagonist's presence grudgingly. She decides to allow him to stay close, thinking with arrogance that his presence might perhaps spare her some annoyances there. Rode watches her walk away and thinks with a slight awkward smile that the girl remains exactly as arrogant as she was in the past. The protagonist turns around surprised upon hearing a familiar voice calling out to him very respectfully in the middle of the busy courtyard. It is Eleanor, who runs toward him, surprised and excited to see that a powerful master like him will also be studying at the academy. The girl supposes, marveling, that he came disguised on some important secret mission, like investigating traitorous nobles allied with demons. Rode asks her not to call him master in public, so as not to ruin his disguise, and Eleanor quickly agrees with his order. She asks how she should call him if not master, and the young man says to just use Rode, taking the opportunity to ask about her grandfather's health. Eleanor says her grandfather is stable, and that they have almost gathered all the materials requested by him, and Rode asks her to look for him when she finishes. Claire notices his delay and shouts angrily, asking what he is waiting for to follow her, which makes Eleanor quite uncomfortable. The protagonist responds that he is already going and runs to catch up with her, leaving Eleanor watching the scene from afar with an indignant look. Eleanor watches him walk away, wondering furiously who that arrogant girl could be to dare speak to her master that way. Claire continues complaining that he is too weak to protect her, while the other students wonder who the boy beside her could be. The students whisper that that is Anderson, the Lord's son, who hates anyone who tries to get close to the Flora Harris. Anderson breaks into a mischievous and arrogant smile upon spotting the beautiful girl approaching through the central courtyard of the Grand Magic Academy. He runs to welcome her falsely, saying he would have loved to come escort her if he had known she would arrive at that time today. Rode watches him, remembering that the Lord's son loved to show off and used to humiliate him for no reason in their old timeline. Annoyed by his approach, Claire points her finger and harshly demands that Anderson simply leave her alone immediately. Anderson approaches with a cynical smile and asks Claire not to be so cold with him, reminding her that she knows his feelings. Annoyed by the young man's inconvenient persistence, Claire screams at the top of her lungs, telling him to vanish from her sight immediately. She makes it clear she doesn't care if he is the Lord's son and demands that he keep completely away from her. His smile disappears instantly, giving way to a gloomy expression of fury as he calls her ungrateful. Anderson completely loses his patience and charges aggressively with his raised hand to try to grab the girl by force. However, Rode intervenes with extreme speed and delivers a violent slap to his hand, preventing the aggressor from touching Claire. The protagonist positions himself firmly between the two, protecting the young woman and facing the rival with total coldness and authority. Anderson holds his aching hand and glares at the protagonist with hatred, demanding to know who that daring boy is. One of his henchmen approaches quickly and whispers in Anderson's ear, revealing the identity of the guy who confronted him. He breaks into a sick smile upon discovering that it is the useless youngest of the Morris family and asks mockingly who he thinks he is. Taken by fury, the Lord's son charges and grabs Rode's shirt collar hard, preparing to start a fight. With an extremely gloomy and scary look, the protagonist tells the rival to back off immediately with a threatening voice. The other students comment frightened about Anderson's cruel reputation and whisper that the youngest of the Morris family is completely screwed. Maintaining his calm, the protagonist firmly grips Anderson's wrist and asks if he didn't hear Claire tell him to back off. Claire watches the scene surprised and confused, unable to understand why the guy she always despised is risking his life for her. The protagonist makes a quick movement and frees himself from the rival's grip with extreme ease and bodily agility. Anderson gets even more annoyed at being rejected and releases his dark energy, shouting that no one has the right to ruin his fun. Rode just stares back at him with his eyes glowing in a deep blue shade, emanating a silent and overwhelming pressure across the courtyard. Anderson's friends hold him back desperately, reminding him that the place is full of witnesses and that the Flora house guards are still there. The bully decides to back down unwillingly, muttering with disdain that the protagonist just had a lot of luck escaping a beating today. As he walks away, Anderson sweats coldly upon remembering Rode's gaze, realizing frightened that he felt a terrible chill down his spine. The group of bullies heads toward the exit of the courtyard, muttering angrily while leaving the place under everyone's watchful eyes. Claire turns to him harshly, calling him an idiot and complaining that his attitude ended up creating problems for the Flora house. She tells him not to meddle anymore and warns that the boy should worry about himself since Anderson is vindictive and won't let this go. Right after that, Claire's childhood friend named Anna runs excitedly through the castle courtyard, waving and shouting her name. Claire turns quickly and breaks into a genuine smile upon seeing her best friend approaching in such a cheerful and warm way. Anna hugs her friend and asks shortly who the boy accompanying her is, and Claire reveals with disdain that is the youngest son of the Morises. Anna comments surprised, asking if he is the famous useless young master, and Claire tells her friend to speak lower so as not to cause a scandal. Claire explains that her mother asked her to keep an eye on him, but complains that he only brings trouble, while Anna jokes that she got herself a lackey. Rode observes Anna from afar and recalls that in his past life, she was a gold digger and helped turn Claire into a mere political game piece. Already inside the classroom, Rode reflects that the teacher's theories are useless, but focuses his plan on the rare item kept in the school safe. It is the Tear of the Dead, an ancient soul energy crystal that can drastically increase his skeletal servant's strength. The class finally comes to an end with the hat-wearing teacher's voice announcing that all students are dismissed for today. Anna stretches cheerfully, celebrating the end of the lessons and confessing out loud that she really wants to go somewhere fun. She tries to convince the Harris to accompany her, but Claire responds seriously, reminding her that their goal there should be to study. Anna insists with a flattering smile, saying that Claire is brilliant and that a short break from studies won't do any harm to her routine. Anderson pops up by surprise in the middle of the conversation, praising Anna's attitude and intruding to try to attract Claire's attention again. He reveals that he organized a luxurious banquet at a famous tavern to celebrate the first day of classes and invites the whole group to go together. Anna comments excitedly that it must be very expensive, but the young man says with arrogance that he doesn't care about the costs as long as all the nobles attend. Anna tries to convince her friend to accept the invitation, praising the young man and commenting that that is the true attitude expected from a lord's son. She takes the opportunity to provoke Rode sideways, saying the lord's behavior is quite different from certain good, for nothings of other families. Anna clasps her hands, pleading affectionately for Claire to accompany her until the Harris finally yields to the persistence and agrees to go to dinner. The group of students starts climbing the stairs of the main hall toward the exit, while Rode walks right behind, observing the movement. Rode's communication pendant glows discreetly, with Leon's voice warning that all the required ingredients have been fully gathered. Rode thinks for a moment and replies back through the transmitter, telling the knight to come meet him directly at the tavern, where the dinner will take place. The sun begins to sink slowly over the horizon, illuminating the luxurious academy courtyard as the young nobles head out toward the city. Anna turns around angrily and calls Rode's attention, asking harshly who gave permission for a lackey like him to accompany them. The protagonist ignores her and focuses his gaze on Claire, remembering that in his past life, the girl ended up disappearing for days right after this festive dinner. He recalls that she returned very sad from her mysterious disappearance, and decides he needs to accompany her closely today to see what really happens. Anna rants about being ignored while Claire turns coldly to Rode, warning him that class is over and he no longer needs to follow her. Anderson approaches with a cynical smile and asks Claire not to be so cold with him, reminding her that she knows his feelings. However, he boils with hatred inside and swears mentally that he is going to teach a painful lesson to the meddling boy. Anna praises the young man with a flattering smile, saying she already expected so much kindness and generosity from the Rune Hair. Claire yields unwillingly, allowing him to come along, and Anna wonders if Rode is just obsessed with her childhood friend. Beneath the beautiful reddish sunset sky, the group finally arrives at the imposing and bustling Crystal Tavern in the city. They push the large wooden doors of the tavern, entering the busy and noisy local establishment. Anderson raises his hands cheerfully and shouts for everyone to enjoy the night since the drinks and food today are on him. Rode walks discreetly through the place, observing closely the noisy clientele composed of warriors and mercenaries. He focuses his gaze on some blood-stained weapons and shields that the warriors left leaning against the wooden tables. The protagonist realizes the customers there are dangerous mercenaries who face death and bloody battles daily. He remembers that Claire is very pretty and concludes, worriedly, that her presence in that dangerous environment caused the past tragedy. Fearing the worst, Rode grabs her arm and calmly warns that it is getting late and it would be better for them to head home. However, the annoying Anna quickly slaps the boy's hand, pushing him away from her friend in an extremely harsh and rude way. She rants, saying she is fed up with him and accuses him of trying to ruin Claire's fun, even before the dinner party starts. Embarrassed, Claire apologizes and explains to the boy that she promised to celebrate with Anna and cannot go back on her word now. Anderson interrupts and warns angrily that Claire is his guest, telling the protagonist to leave alone if he is uncomfortable there. The commotion and shouting start to draw the attention of some muscular mercenaries drinking at a table near the dining hall. An enormous, scarred warrior approaches with disdain, mocking the group of spoiled young nobles who decided to party in that place. The imposing man ignores the complaints and begins to walk slowly toward Claire with clearly malicious and bad intentions. He breaks into a scary red-eyed smile, commenting mockingly that their group brought a pretty girl as a gift today. Anderson complains to the manager, demanding to know why those filthy mercenaries are still there, since he paid to rent out the place. The mercenary turns slowly, taken by the fury of his red eyes, and asks threateningly what the insolent youth said. The tavern owner tries to calm the mood and suggests, frightened, that maybe it would be better for Anderson and his friends to return the next day. Anderson's lackey shouts angrily, asking if he wants the boss to break his promise and be embarrassed in front of the beautiful Claire today. The owner whispers a desperate warning that those men are ruthless assassins from out of town, and it's best not to pick a fight with them. Anderson refuses to listen and thinks arrogantly whether a bunch of failed mercenaries would dare defy the heir of the powerful Rune house. The warrior shouts furiously, saying he doesn't care about noble titles, and tells the boy to leave immediately if he wants to get out alive. One of the Lord's henchmen charges, shouting that no one has the audacity to face the Rune family, and tries to assault the bully mercenary right there. A violent crash echoes through the hall when the lackey's attack is quickly met with brute force by the dangerous mercenary of the group. Anderson's henchman is knocked out and falls humiliatingly to the floor after receiving a spectacular and violent kick right in the middle of his chest. Anderson watches the scene completely shocked and sweating coldly, unable to believe the warriors actually had the courage to start the fight. Laughing, the assailant pours his mug of drink over the fallen noble on the floor and warns mockingly that picking a fight with them is the same as dying. He steps on the defeated opponent and warns cruelly that if they were in the wild forest, the arrogant boy would already be dead now. Observing the commotion from afar and in silence, the protagonist sketches a slight smile, thinking that the situation is getting very interesting. Sweating coldly, Anderson raises his hands in panic and tries to negotiate, asking to speak with the group's leader to avoid more trouble. The warrior points backward and mocks, saying the young man has no authority whatsoever to speak with Captain Kent, telling him to call his father instead. The dreaded Captain Kent watches the movement in silence, maintaining an imposing and gloomy posture with his huge sword resting on his back. Anderson trembles with dread upon recognizing the name of the relentless assassin who has a reputation for killing even members of the nobility for money in the forest. The cruel captain breaks into a mocking smile and warns with scorn that the young Rune heir's life is worth absolutely nothing to them. Desperate, Anderson's companions retreat in fear upon realizing they messed with the most dangerous criminal gang in the region. Anna trembles with dread, grabbing Claire by the arm, and laments in desperation, saying they made the worst mistake of their lives by coming in there. Kent's henchmen start laughing out loud at the noble boy's terrified face, who almost cried just from hearing their group's name right there. Anderson sweats coldly, thinking desperately that he cannot suffer that embarrassment in front of Claire, or he will lose all his respect at school. He bows, swallowing his pride, and apologizes, proposing to end the fight right there in the name of his important family's political prestige. He faces the captain, trying to use his father Lord Rune's influence to get a peaceful and honorable way out of that tense situation. Seeing the apparent negotiation, the two girls break into a relieved smile, believing Anderson's prestige will save the group from danger. However, Kent makes an outrageous proposal, ordering the two young women to dance and drink with his henchmen so he will spare the group's lives. Anderson widens his eyes, sweating coldly upon hearing the captain's humiliating demand, ordering him to force the girls to dance there himself. Kent's henchmen start celebrating and laughing out loud, eager to see the rich and spoiled noble girls dancing for them in the tavern. Faced with the terrible humiliation, Claire panics and holds her own chest frightened, while Rode just watches everything with total coldness. Anderson tries to intervene, sweating nervously, and says the proposal is not appropriate since Claire is the heiress of the important Flora house. The warrior tells him to shut up, laughing, and says noble titles are of no use there, since it's just a harmless dance. Desperate and cowardly, the other young nobles start pleading for Claire to agree to dance to avoid the mercenaries' fury. Claire orders firmly for Rode to take Anna away, proudly stating that they won't have the audacity to lay a hand on her since she is a noble. Rode puts his hand in front of Claire with total calmness and calmly warns that there is not the slightest need to reach that point. The protagonist steps forward imposing style and tells Captain Kent directly that it's better for them to end the commotion right there. Kent stares at him with a gloomy look and asks angrily who the hell he is to think he has any right to order the confrontation to stop. Anna screams desperately, asking if he has lost his mind, and accuses him of trying to ruin the deal Anderson secured just so they could dance. The huge Vice, captain of the gang, approaches, puffing with anger, and complains that some idiot always shows up to try to ruin their fun. Rung, the Vice, captain of the mercenaries, warns laughing that he is going to beat up the protagonist first before everyone enjoys the nobles' dance. The giant leaps overwhelmingly toward Rode with his fist raised, prepared to unleash a devastating punch against him. Seeing the imminent danger, Claire panics and screams desperately for Rode's name. Fearing he will be killed by the strong warrior, Rode just stares back at him with total coldness, and with his blue eyes glowing intensely, showing he is not the least bit worried. Enraged by the boy's calm look, the Vice captain screams that he is going to die and unleashes his strongest attack with total fury and power. He executes a devastating flaming slash with his sword, creating an immense wave of fire that swallows the entire direction where Rode is standing. Claire cries in desperation and screams the protagonist's name, believing the young Morris was completely consumed by the attack's flames. Anderson yells desperately, saying Rode has gone completely crazy and that his insolence will end up killing everyone inside that tavern. A thunderous metallic noise echoes throughout the tavern hall, revealing the brutal clash of the impact that has just occurred between the forces. The mercenaries watch perplexed and sweating coldly upon realizing the boy managed to dodge and nullify Rum's powerful flaming slash. With total calmness, the protagonist borrows a sword from one of the tavern's mercenaries, leaving the weapon's owner speechless. Rum gets furious upon realizing he is being completely ignored and charges again with all his strength, yelling that the boy is going to die. The protagonist faces the shining blade with a cold smile and mentally warns his servant Bloodseat that this time they have a real sword. The legendary swordsman's spirit emerges imposing behind Rode, while the youth prepares a destructive blow imbued with immense blue energy. The boy unleashes a perfect and devastating semicircular slash, creating a colossal wave of blue energy that cuts the air with absurd speed. The violent impact between the blades generates an immense explosion of sparks and magical dust, illuminating the entire Crystal Tavern dining hall. The Vice captain widens his eyes and trembles with dread upon feeling the overwhelming force of the protagonist's attack colliding against his own weapon. A high-pitched sound of breaking metal echoes when the piece of Rum's sword falls unusable to the floor, confirming that his weapon was shattered. The warrior stares at the handle of his destroyed sword, completely in shock, unable to accept that a mere boy managed to break his weapon like that. He puffs with hatred, humiliated upon realizing he suffered embarrassment in front of his captain and all his mercenary gang companions there. Rum decides to resort to brute physical strength and leaps toward Rode, shouting that they are unmatched masters in close quarters combat. The protagonist remains completely motionless, staring at the giant fist approaching his face without showing any concern or fear. He dodges the punch with agility and mentally recognizes that he still doesn't have enough physical strength to go toe-to-toe with the big guy. The gloomy and scary presence of his skeletal servant manifests in the air, imbuing the protagonist's next movement with absolute power. The giant tries to grab Rode with his immense hands, but the boy moves like a true ghost, easily escaping his brute claws. He channels his servant's dark flame and activates his spell, generating an immense amount of blue flames around his left fist. Rode delivers the charged strike and hits the Vice captain's chest dead on, generating a thunderous explosion that makes the whole tavern shake slightly. The immense rum is thrown violently backward due to the devastating impact of the flaming punch, destroying tables along his fall. Fallen pathetically, the vice captain drools blood from his mouth and stares at him with wide eyes before passing out completely on the floor. Anderson watches the scene perplexed and sweating coldly, unable to accept that the useless Road defeated the strong vice captain of that terrible gang. Upon seeing their companion defeated, the other members of Kent's gang step forward with very gloomy looks of hatred for the boy. Kent stares at Road with fury in his eyes and promises sadistically to slice the boy's flesh piece by piece to feed the wild beasts. The young nobles fall into total desperation and complain that Road's victory only served to anger Kent's bloodthirsty gang even more. Anderson and his cowardly friends decide to flee the place in silence, taking advantage of the fact that the protagonist is distracting the group of assassins. Claire hesitates, worried about Road, but Anna pulls her hard by the arm, telling her to stop caring about the useless Morris boy. Upon seeing Claire pass through the door, the protagonist sketches a cold look and thinks with relief that her leaving will make things much easier from now on. Kent smiles sadistically and warns that he won't kill him, but will make him suffer all night before demanding an enormous ransom from the Morris family. With his blue eyes glowing, the boy thinks coldly that if he can't settle it peacefully, he will simply kill everyone there and use Kent as a servant. He positions himself with his sword in hand, facing the captain head on and asking calmly how much the mercenary leader himself thinks he is worth. Suddenly, the captain hears firm steps echoing through the tavern entrance and turns furiously, shouting to know who else came to die. An imposing knight in gray armor and a white cape enters the establishment with a calm and determined look, facing the group of criminals. Captain Kent's eyes widen in fright, and he trembles as he asks what Lord Leon of the Ashblade House is doing there. Ignoring the captain, the knight Leon addresses Road with extreme respect and asks if the mercenaries hurt him. He laughs and remarks that it would be impossible for those clowns to lay a hand on Road since even he wouldn't last a single strike against the master. Kent watches the scene in a cold sweat, unable to understand why the legendary Lord Leon treats this child with such respect and submission. Leon points authoritatively at Kent and asks angrily who gave him the right to threaten an honored guest of the Ashblade House. Kent falls into total despair, realizing that if he offends the legendary Ashblade family, his entire mercenary band will be wiped out tonight. The captain immediately drops to his knees, begging for mercy and offering sincere apologies to Master Road for his arrogant and blind attitude. The other mercenaries in the gang watch with gaping mouths and in complete shock as they see their dreaded leader beg for forgiveness on his knees. Kent holds out his trembling hands and offers Road the medallion that serves as the ultimate symbol of leadership for the band's mercenaries. He weeps, swearing absolute loyalty, and declares that from now on the entire band will be under the direct command of the young Necromancer. Road perceives the captain's cleverness in calming his wrath and calculates that keeping the band alive will be much more useful for his future plans than leaving them dead. The protagonist takes the amulet of command and decides that, out of consideration for Leon, he will spare the lives of all the mercenaries for now. However, with a cold look, the protagonist decides that even while sparing the band's life, a severe and exemplary punishment is still necessary. An immense and terrifying black smoke begins to manifest in the tavern courtyard, rising up right behind the terrified captain. Kent looks up, trembling and sweating with dread as he feels the overwhelming and evil energy that has just been summoned by the boy. A skeletal demon with glowing red eyes emerges from the shadows, manifesting menacingly behind the mercenary captain. The terrible creature unleashes a wave of dark energy that strikes and severely injures the warriors as punishment for their insolence. Without looking back, Road orders Leon to accompany him and leaves the tavern while the mercenaries remain fallen, begging for their lives. The warrior Leon guides the youth to the exit, warning that the danger has been completely dispelled and that the path is clear for them to continue their journey. Kent wipes the sweat from his face, relieved for not having angered the protagonist even further, knowing that his entire band would have been wiped out today. The carriage speeds swiftly through the dark of night back to the estate, and Leon warns that the head of the Ashblade family is already anxiously waiting for him. A short time later, the group finally arrives at the luxurious and colossal mansion of the prestigious Ashblade family, illuminated beneath the starry sky. The protagonist enters the main room where Eleanor and her weakened grandfather are already gathered. Waiting for the healing treatment to begin, Eleanor breaks into a radiant smile of relief and happily celebrates the arrival of the young master, who promises to save her dear grandfather's life. She offers Rode a silver tray containing all the exotic ingredients he demanded, and asks apprehensively if they will be enough. The girl comments with relief that the herbs and crystals are extremely rare and confesses that the family went through immense trouble to gather them. The boy confirms seriously that the materials will do and begins to channel his dark mana, generating an intense blue glow in his hands. Rode approaches the elder and uses his power to begin the painful process of extracting the demonic energy that was consuming the man's health. Focused, the protagonist firmly orders everyone to step back to ensure their safety in the face of the immense magical pressure unleashed there. He keeps his eyes glowing intensely blue, showing that he is using the maximum of his control over the energy to seal the evil. The demonic spirit cursing the elder begins to be forced out, roaring with hatred as it is completely subjugated by the Necromancer. The boy makes a quick and firm movement, concentrating all the dissipated evil energy directly into the palm of his mana-wrapped hand. The frightening shadow of the monster that parasitized the elder's body is completely dragged out and trapped by the flow of the protagonist's blue spell. Rode stares at it with his glowing eyes and warns coldly that the evil entity has nowhere left to escape his absolute control. The evil spirit struggles and roars in despair as it is compacted and transformed into pure energy by the magical power of the boy Morris. Eleanor watches everything in extreme shock upon finally seeing the true form of the curse that tormented her dear grandfather's health for 10 years. Leon is left perplexed by the demon's strength and wonders, trembling how Rode can be so powerful as to subjugate the monster with ease. The protagonist realizes that the dark creature is still trying to resist and decides to increase his mana pressure to end the fight. He unleashes a charged strike that definitively breaks all the resistance of the evil spirit, generating a loud blue rumble in the room. Rode uses both hands in a coordinated manner to seal the dark smoke, condensing it completely into a solid, crystalline shape right there. The boy finishes the spell by trapping the entire demon permanently and brightly inside a glowing death energy crystal. He gazes at the created gemstone with satisfaction, thinking that he will use the energy from that death stone to increase the power of his servant blade seat. Leon shouts in perplexity, praising Rode's feat and exalting the boy for removing in minutes the curse that tortured the Lord for over 10 years. Eleanor explains weeping that her grandfather was ambushed by demons in battle decades ago, and that ever since he has suffered from this incurable disease. Rode warns her calmly, suggesting that she step away from the elder for a few moments, leaving the young woman confused by his sudden request. Suddenly, the old man's body begins to release a gigantic wave of wind and golden magical energy accumulated during all those years of pain. Eleanor protects her face with her arms, startled by the strong gale, and wonders apprehensively what is happening to her grandfather's body. Rode explains that the demon drained the elder's mana, and that with the removal of the curse, the warrior's power will begin to recover rapidly. The old man stands imposingly, enveloped in a spectacular flow of golden energy that regenerates his health and restores his lost original power. The Baron looks at his restored hands and celebrates with emotion upon realizing that he has leveled up, reaching the pinnacle of the intermediate Archmage realm. The elder laughs happily, confessing that he never imagined that at his advanced age, he would still have the chance to reach the advanced Archmage level. Leon thinks with emotion that after years of humiliation and decline, the luck and prestige of his legendary family are finally going to change for the better. He silently acknowledges that all that wonderful turnaround was only possible thanks to the generous help of young Master Rode. Eleanor watches him confusedly and asks with curiosity to know what exactly is happening to her grandfather's body at that instant. Rode explains that although the curse sucked the old man's mana, it also ended up strengthening and tempering his physical resistance for 10 years. Eleanor understands the explanation and asks with surprise if this means her grandfather somehow managed to turn a curse into a gift. The grandfather confirms cheerfully, revealing that besides recovering his old strength, he is now just a step away from becoming an advanced Archmage. With a determined look, he proudly declares that now his family will be able to reconquer everything they ended up losing during these long years of pain. He thanks the boy profoundly, swearing with respect that the Ashblade House will follow Rhodes' orders unconditionally starting today. Rhodes says there is no need for so much formality, since he already got what he wanted, but confesses that he has an important question to ask him. The elder readily agrees and kindly asks the young master to ask whatever he wants without any ceremony. Rhodes inquires where he contracted that strong curse, thinking that finding the place of origin will make it easier to get more death energy gems. The grandfather reveals that he contracted the infection over 10 years ago during a great battle against demons that took place in the dangerous Valley of Lamentations. Rhodes recognizes that the valley is too dangerous for his current level and decides to postpone the trip until he manages to elevate his own necromancer power. A short time later, the family carriage speeds along the dirt road amid the cheers of celebration and relief from the knight Leon. Leon announces with satisfaction that the residence requested by the boy is already completely ready, and that it is very close to the Seven Cities Magic Academy. The protagonist steps out of the carriage calmly and begins to observe the surroundings of his new temporary dwelling. He comes across an immense and luxurious mansion, illuminated by the warm colors of dusk, which will serve as his new refuge. Rhodes thinks with a slight, awkward smile that he had asked only for a simple place to spend the night, not a property as colossal and luxurious as that one. The sun shines brightly on the horizon, while the joyful laughter of students echoes through the courtyards of the luxurious academy. The following morning, satisfied, Eleanor's grandfather keeps laughing with happiness in the room, while the girl comments that young Master Morris has already left there for some time. He apologizes with a laugh and advises his granddaughter to maintain a great friendship with Rhodes, praising the boy as the most mysterious person he has ever met. Eleanor turns red with embarrassment at her grandfather's words and replies timidly that she already knows very well the importance of being kind to the guy. With a serious look, the elder declares that it is time to take revenge on Rustblade, strongly suspecting that the rival was responsible for his old curse. Meanwhile, beneath the starry cloak of night, the scene shifts to reveal the imposing and gloomy castle belonging to the noble Flora family. Claire enters the castle's main hall with slow steps, while her mother watches her from the couch and asks why her daughter returned so late today. Claire's elegant mother asks kindly if her daughter met with the young man from the Morris family, and if the two managed to get along on the first day. Claire looks away with disdain and replies half-heartedly, confirming that she met the guy, but without showing any sympathy for him. The mother says he is not a bad boy despite the malicious rumors, and the heiress promises grudgingly that she will try to get along with him so as not to worry her. However, alone with her thoughts, Claire recalls the confrontation with the mercenaries and admits that maybe the boy isn't the good for nothing everyone says. Meanwhile, in the silence of his new quarters at the mansion, Rhodes prepares to kick off a very important process of conjuring his mana. The protagonist grips the dark energy crystal he refined and announces that the moment has finally come to increase the power of his skeletal servant. With authority, he invokes the name of his faithful warrior and lets the trail of mystic energy begin to emanate intensely throughout the dark room. The spirit of the legendary swordsman manifests on his knees before his sovereign, waiting with absolute respect to receive the great power promised. Rhodes analyzes the servant's level, knowing he is weakened, but trusts that the warrior's fantastic swordsmanship will compensate for any disadvantage at the start. The boy reaches out his hand and releases the flow contained within the refined crystal, making the gem glow and float magnificently in the center of the room. With a mystic gaze, he commands the knight to accept the dark power as a gift, and the energy begins to be transferred into the undead body. The death energy crystal shatters into several glowing pieces, releasing the entire concentrated flow of the demon that was sealed earlier in the test. The powerful trail of dark energy envelopes Bladeseat's skeletal body in a spectacular way, being totally absorbed by the ghost hero of the past. The protagonist watches the magical fusion closely, feeling the pressure of the power increase by the second as he concludes the refining process of his mana. A loud crack of blue mystic energy occurs, indicating the end of the transfer and the absolute success of the enhancement ritual for his strong warrior. Rhodes feels his own mana expand overwhelmingly due to the strengthening of his bond with the soul of his powerful skeletal servant. The boy notices excitedly that Bladeseat's gain in strength also ended up boosting his own own magical cultivation level in a surprising and fast way. He contemplates the blue flames glowing in his left hand and celebrates upon noting that he has just broken the barrier to the peak apprentice mage level. He is pleased to see that his servant also leveled up, but recognizes that he will still need to act with total caution and discretion in front of ordinary people. The next morning, the scene returns to the bustling main lobby of the prestigious Magic Academy. As students walk toward their classes, Anna notices the Harris's distraction and asks with curiosity what exactly she is searching for with her gaze through the busy halls of the teaching castle. Claire searches for Rode, and the mean Anna mocks with a laugh that the good for nothing was probably already sliced up and thrown to feed the wild beasts by the mercenaries. Claire turns around irritated and calls out to her friend harshly, reminding her that the youngest of the Morris family risked his life to protect their escape yesterday. Anna tries to brush off the gravity with an awkward smile and says she is just commenting on reality since they face the worst band of assassins around. Anderson walks angrily down the steps, ranting with disdain that the brat Rhodes stole all the attention that was supposed to be his. Suddenly, he halts his step and turns around startled upon spotting the protagonist calmly walking up the academy stairs without a single scratch. He widens his eyes in perplexity, wondering how the good-for-nothing Rode managed to survive that terrifying band without any injuries. Claire runs toward Rode, relieved, and the protagonist calmly warns that the mercenaries will no longer bother anyone. Anderson and his partners are intrigued, unable to understand what actually happened after their escape at the tavern last night. The rival concludes with a laugh that the Morris family must have paid a fortune to rescue the youngest from the clutches of the dangerous assassins. Elegant footsteps echo down the corridor as the practical magic instructor begins to walk up the steps toward the classroom. The charismatic Professor Margaret enters the room, announcing that today's class will be practical training in the dangerous monster forest. Rode remembers that the forest is the territory of his new mercenary band and decides that he needs to keep a close watch on Claire during the training. In silence, the boy discreetly fiddles with his Ashblade family communication pendant, preparing to act if necessary. Rode uses the artifact in an isolated area and calls Captain Kent, warning him that he has some important questions to ask him. On the other end, Kent answers promptly with total respect and places himself at disposal to reveal everything the young master wants to know. Rode asks about the secrets of the monster forest, since his band has operated in the location for many years and knows everything very well. Kent explains that the forest has been strange after an ancient tome started releasing dark mana, generating a stir among the local monsters. He warns that the few who tried to investigate the tome came back crazy, murmuring about the undead, and advises avoiding the deep area. Kent adds that most common monsters are weak for Rhodes' level and offers to guide the master during the journey. The protagonist politely declines the invitation, saying it is not necessary and that the information received is already enough for today. He reflects pensively about the tome, which did not exist in his past life, and sees the mortal danger as a perfect opportunity for evolution. Soon after, the students board the wooden carriages organized by the academy, preparing to kick off the training trip. Seated in the carriage, the young nobles observe the beautiful valley landscape stretching all around as they approach the final destination. In the middle of the trip, Anderson's lackey asks in a low voice if the plan to attack and take revenge on Rode in the forest is still on. Anderson replies coldly that his focus is Claire, but swears he will kill Rode if the boy dares to cross his path again today. The carriages finally arrive and park at the borders of the terrifying and dense monster forest, where the training will take place. The professor gathers the youths in the dirt courtyard and encourages them to use all their practical talent to face the dangers from then on. She warns about the recent increase in shadow wolves and gives the mission to hunt the beasts and deliver a claw as proof by dusk. Right after entering the woods, a violent rumble occurs as a huge, glowing fireball is conjured and fired high into the air. The magic explodes spectacularly in the treetops, drawing enthusiastic shouts from the students watching Anderson's power show. Anderson displays a proud smile, thinking that this is the perfect opportunity to use his fire magic to impress the Harris. Anna comments enthusiastically about the strength of the boy's fireball and insists that Claire form a team with the young lord to go together. Claire hesitates and replies timidly that she thinks it is much safer to stay by Rhodes' side after what she witnessed at the tavern last night. Rode walks in silence in a solitary way through the dense woods, observing the movement of the other students in the distance at the hunting courtyard. He closes his eyes, feeling his mana circulate, and notices with satisfaction that his sensory perception radius has expanded to 300 meters. The boy catches the presence of various beasts around and pinpoints a slight oscillation of death mana coming from the deepest area of the forest. He approaches Claire and calmly suggests that the two form a duo to ensure her safety during the hunt for the gray wolves. The Flora Harris breaks into a friendly smile and readily agrees with the young master's proposal, feeling quite safe by his side. Anderson proudly displays the carcass of his first hunted wolf, drawing effusive praise and flattery from the other students in his carriage. He strikes a pose of superiority, commenting with scorn that those low-level monsters are not opponents worthy of his magical flames. Anna pulls Claire excitedly, pointing to the boy's feet, and insists in a triumphant tone that they should form an alliance with the young lord. She waves cheerfully and asks out loud if she and Claire can join his team to hunt the shadow wolves together today. Anderson breaks into a huge victorious smile and replies excitedly that it will be an honor, promising to ensure the safety of both in the dense forest. While they converse in the courtyard, a large venomous leopard sleeps peacefully atop a rock, covered by a scary purple mist. Suddenly, the beast wakes up startled and leaps off the rock ferociously, its eyes glowing in a very scary and violent yellowish tone. It is a giant shadow beast with glowing eyes that roars with fury upon sensing the presence of human invaders in its hunting territory. Rode walks in an isolated way, observing the surroundings in silence, while the other students walk in a group right behind through the dense woods. The professor adjusts her glasses worriedly upon noticing a strong monster boss presence in the area and wonders if the youngest son also felt the mana. Margaret runs to the deep area and orders Rode to watch the students, warning that she needs to eliminate the creature to ensure everyone's safety. Anderson complains with disdain, asking why the teacher told the good-for-nothing Rode to watch them since he himself just soloed a shadow wolf. Rode realizes that the death energy is growing fast, making the monsters furious, and knows ordinary students won't last against them. Anderson shouts arrogantly, telling everyone to stay by his side, guaranteeing that his magical flames are enough to protect the whole group there. Beneath the dark mantle of the forest, the young students begin to walk together in a line, guided by the confident and arrogant Rune Hare. Anderson walks through the forest and notices, intrigued, that the place has suddenly gone silent. Wondering where the wolves went, an immense shadow wolf leaps ferociously out of the darkness, and Anderson shouts excitedly, telling Rode to watch his show of bravery. The young lord displays a proud smile and quickly conjures a glowing fireball in his hand to attack the monster. The fireball explodes directly in the wolf's face, but the beast resists the blow and keeps advancing furiously toward him. The terrible monster advances, displaying its sharp claws, ready to rip the arrogant Hare of the Rune family to pieces. The beast leaps swiftly toward the desperate boy, who retreats terrified without managing to react in time to avoid the impact. Anderson screams in panic, not understanding why his fire spell, which used to solo the beasts, failed completely this time. The huge shadow wolf roars with fury, showing its sharp teeth and cornering the students in the middle of the dense forest. However, Rode quickly appears in front of the rival and activates his power, generating intense blue flames to combat the giant beast. The concentrated attack hits the monster's chest full-on, neutralizing its violent onslaught in a spectacular and fast way. Anderson watches the scene perplexed and in a cold sweat, unable to believe that the good-for-nothing Rode saved his life with such ease. The gigantic shadow wolf falls defeated to the forest floor, leaving the entire group of students open-mouthed at Rode's power. Claire watches the scene shocked and asks, marveling at how Rode could defeat with a single blow the wolf that almost killed Anderson. Anna sweats with dread upon realizing that the boy truly has absurd power and that he lied about the excuses for his survival. Rode realizes that many monsters are approaching and decides that the only way to save everyone will be to summon his giant servant. The protagonist starts running toward the dark woods, and Claire screams in despair, begging him to come back because it is dangerous. Rode steps into the dark mist and comes across dozens of fierce wolves with red eyes surrounding him from all sides of the clearing. Without showing fear, the young necromancer holds out his hand and conjures his greatest power, ordering his powerful servant to manifest there. The forest floor shakes violently as the colossal earth destroyer emerges from the shadows, answering his master's call. The boy positions himself and firmly orders his enormous skeletal monster to eliminate all the enraged wild beasts. In the yard, the terrible bone giant lets out a monstrous and frightening roar, setting off to attack the horde of shadow wolves right there. The creature crushes the ground with devastating force, generating an explosion of dirt and dust that sends the wolves flying through the air all at once. Upon feeling the rumble, Anderson and his friends tremble with fear upon recognizing the overwhelming power of the Earth Destroyer coming from the woods. Claire gets worried, while the envious Anna complains with a laugh that the good-for-nothing road was certainly devoured by the monster in the forest. Anna grabs Anderson's arm, begging for protection, and the young lord, trembling with dread, merely stutters in agreement with the girl. Meanwhile, the immense skeletal servant keeps tearing the wild beasts apart with its giant, implacable bone claws. The Earth Destroyer stands victorious before the remainder of the frightened wolf band, imposing its monstrous presence in the clearing. Rode notices that some wolves were not corrupted by the dark mana and calmly orders his giant to spare their lives there. Obeying the Necromancer's order, the gigantic creature turns its back on the beasts and begins to walk slowly back to the refuge. Suddenly, the sound of moving leaves catches the protagonist's attention, indicating that something dangerous is approaching the location now. In another part of the woods, Anna falls into despair and holds her terrified head upon noticing that the trail of destruction is approaching them, but she breaks into a relieved smile upon seeing that they are just shadow wolves fleeing frightened, and not the terrifying skeletal giant. Anderson displays a brave smile and swears to the girls that his magical flames are more than enough to defeat the wolves there. Meanwhile, in the deep area, Professor Margaret concentrates her immense red energy on her staff, preparing her best spell. With an extremely focused and determined look, she aims toward the hidden monster, disposed to use all her strength to eliminate it. She unleashes a colossal column of red fire that tears through the dark forest sky, exploding directly against the terrifying creature. After the big explosion, the professor celebrates, exhausted upon seeing that the terrible monster boss was completely carbonized by her power. However, she notices a trail of dark mana on the monster's body and realizes worriedly that there is something terribly wrong in the deep forest. Margaret widens her eyes in complete shock upon hearing a sinister sound approaching her position in the middle of the dark forest. The echo of horse footsteps resounds through the dark and cold woods, increasing the tension as a mysterious figure begins to emerge in the mist. The horse's hoof steps into muddy water enveloped in blue flames, revealing the frightening nature of the creature that has just approached. It is the fearsome and legendary Death Knight, riding a skeletal horse glowing in blue and emanating immense dark mana. The dark creature wears heavy armor and wields a long spear, confirming it to be the resurrected warrior from the ancient forest home. She trembles with dread upon feeling its power, estimating startled that the creature possesses the level of a destructive intermediate archmage. Margaret recognizes that her power level is inferior to the monster's, but swears she must stop it there to save her students' lives. She positions her staff glowing intensely in red, decided to use up to the last drop of her remaining mana on that final strike. With a desperate scream, the professor conjures her most destructive spell, summoning a colossal fire meteor from the forest sky. An immense column of red flames rises toward the clouds, concentrating all the destructive power of the professor's elemental magic. The colossal fire meteor falls relentlessly toward the Death Knight, who merely watches the attack without showing fear. The devastating impact generates a gigantic explosion that makes the ground shake for miles, illuminating the entire forest with red flames. Margaret adjusts her glasses, sweating with exhaustion, and asks panting if she really managed to defeat the powerful knight. But the monster cuts through the smoke with its gigantic spear imbued with dark mana, advancing toward her without hesitating. The magic instructor tries to retreat in a hurry, but the Death Knight's speed is overwhelming and implacable. In another part of the forest, Rode praises the Earth Destroyer and uses his spell to recall the enormous skeletal monster. The protagonist suddenly falls silent and turns serious upon feeling an extremely dense, dark energy fluctuation coming from the woods. He looks in the direction of the dark mist and concludes, with a cold smile, that the true threat of the forest is coming to meet him. The Death Knight emerges before him, riding its bone mount glowing in mystic flames and emanating a lot of power. With a sovereign look, the protagonist warns coldly that he is the monarch of the dead and demands that the opponent kneel before him. But the creature unleashes a swift attack with its spear, generating a metallic crash at the start of the violent combat between them. The Death Knight charges furiously, unleashing fast and heavy strikes with its enormous spear covered by a dense blue energy. Rode blocks the successive attacks with absolute precision, making the metallic sound of collision echo all across the dark forest. The clash of forces forces generates an explosion of dust and wind that clears a patch in the woods, showing the devastating trail of the combat. The protagonist evaluates the fight focused and perceives that the opponent possesses an amount of black mana that is incredibly dense and strong. A colossal spiral of dark energy begins to rise toward the clouds, catching the attention of all the nobles in the distance. Claire trembles with dread upon feeling the immense pressure of the rising power and confesses that her body simply cannot stop shaking. Anderson points tensely to the light and comments, sweating, that the explosion occurred right in the direction where the good-for-nothing road ran off alone. The spiral of death energy keeps spinning spectacularly over the clearing, creating a devastating magical storm in the woods. Fallen and injured on the ground, Professor Margaret watches the smoke with immense concern. With no strength left to manage to stand up and fight, she remembers with despair that the students' carriages are right in the direction of the monster's route and tries to move at any cost. Back to the combat, Rode positions himself with his iron sword in hand before the knight, who stares down at him from atop his dark mount. The protagonist realizes that the monster instinctively seeks to hunt the strongest prey to evolve, and concludes that it made a bad choice of target. With a cold and deep look, Rode says the creature's pathetic and promises to end its suffering using his true power. The Death Knight ignores the warning and raises its giant spear, preparing to deliver a lethal strike to rip Rode's body apart. Blue energy envelops the monster with fury while its soul begins to emanate a frightening pressure under its captain's orders. The knight charges swiftly with its mount, activating its furious charge technique and shouting that it will never submit to Rode's control. The monster runs toward the protagonist with absurd speed that makes the earth and tree leaves tremble under the weight of the attack. The boy dodges with mastery, knowing he cannot clash head-on with the creature in a direct physical way due to his current level. He focuses his dark mana and conjures the secret necromancy art of memory echo to manipulate the mind of that ancient undead hero. An immense blue illusion begins to manifest in the room, enveloping the knight's mind and forcing him to relive his old memories. The monster's mind is transported to an old bloody battlefield from the primordial era, created exclusively by Rode's magic. Totally trapped in the illusion, the Death Knight weakens his grip on his mount's reins while his mana begins to fluctuate wildly. He sees himself surrounded by thousands of iron soldiers who fall chaotically around him as he relives the moments of pain from his death. The monster lets out a desperate roar of agony and hatred upon realizing he was cornered in the clearing by the protagonist's illusionary technique. Two immense blue eyes glowing in mana emerge in the sky of the illusion, and Rode warns coldly that that grave will be his final destination. Rode evaluates the opponent's power level seriously, knowing the knight is weakened, but trusts in the victory of his strong servant. The imposing spirit of the legendary swordsman materializes in the air, wielding his colossal illuminated sword under his sovereign's orders. The glowing-eyed servant swears absolute loyalty to the protagonist and guarantees with respect that he will kill the terrible opponent without any hesitation. Totally insane due to the memory echo, the Death Knight transforms into a combat machine and sets off for the final charge right there. Crown Blade Seat unleashes a perfect and devastating semicircular slash, creating a wave of blue energy that cuts through the air with extreme speed. The brutal impact between the gigantic blades generates a violent rumble, shaking the surrounding trees and cracking the clearing stone ground. The Death Knight's bone spear is swatted away with overwhelming power due to the destructive force of Crown Blade Seat's swordsmanship strike. The clash of forces generates a magnificent explosion of blue energy that shatters the clearing's rocks and kicks up an immense dust curtain right there. The two ghost warriors engage in a frantic exchange of fast and precise strikes with their weapons, illuminating the entire dark forest. The ground is completely cracked by the incredible magical pressure unleashed by the giant's battle, collapsing part of the dense forest terrain. Crown Blade Seat moves like a swift blur and unleashes a perfect diagonal slash against the knight's heavy armor in the combat. A sharp sound of breaking metal echoes when the strike hits the opponent's spear, which cracks entirely due to the absurd force of the impact right there. The Death Knight tries to defend himself by raising his arms, but realizes in despair that his weapon was rendered useless by the servant's fantastic swordsmanship. With a brutal downward movement, the skeletal hero strikes the opponent's chest, knocking him off his mount with immense force and violence. Fallen in a humiliating way on the ground, the knight accepts his defeat, recognizing with respect that he faced a far superior and powerful warrior. The defeated monster lets out a final roar of agony as its body begins to dissipate into into pure blue mana under the command of Rode Morris. The Death Knight screams furiously, ordering his opponent to die as he prepares a final blow with his dark energy. He delivers a devastating attack, cutting through the air at impressive speed and releasing a massive wave of purple power. The violent strike advances, destroying everything in its path and generating a huge shock wave that consumes the entire clearing. Facing the attack, the Phantom Servant remains completely calm and focused, ready to counterattack with mastery. He activates his powerful sword technique, creating a spinning shield of blue flames around his body. The collision of the two giant forces generates a catastrophic explosion that lights up the skies and cracks the forest floor. After the loud crash, the knight observes the smoke from atop his mount, believing he has won the combat. But the monster is soon surprised to realize that his adversary's body simply vanished from the spot without leaving a trace. In the blink of an eye, the blue, flamed hero appears right behind him on the mount, preparing the mercy strike. Without giving time for a reaction, the warrior advances with extreme speed to execute his definitive attack. He conjures his soul-piercing technique, delivering a piercing attack imbued with overwhelming mana. The strike cuts through the night, releasing a colossal beam of blue energy that tears through the monster's armor and body. The servant whispers the master has granted truth to death to the knight as the opponent begins to disintegrate. With a final crash, the powerful knight's body explodes into pieces, scattering energy fragments across the forest. The battle finally ends, leaving only a devastated clearing and small blue flames floating calmly through the air. The loyal swordsman kneels before Rode and reports with deep respect that the terrible enemy has been defeated. Rode appears, walking calmly through the woods, and congratulates his servant on the excellent job in the battle. The boy then reaches out his hand to collect the remains of the knight's weakened soul, which are now floating before him. With a serene gaze, he wishes that poor lost soul would finally rest in peace for all eternity and dispels it. Meanwhile, Professor Margaret walks hurriedly through the forest, following the tracks of destruction left behind. She thinks worriedly that she needs to stop the knight, no matter what, to ensure the safety of all her students. Suddenly, she stops and widens her eyes, in complete shock upon spotting something totally unexpected in the clearing ahead. She spots Rode standing in the middle of a huge, devastated, and barren landscape, unable to believe what she is seeing. Margaret is incredulous to realize that the young man standing there at the center of all that destruction is none other than Rode Morris. She notices that the evil aura has completely vanished at that spot and wonders if the boy could have been responsible for killing him. Rode turns around, feigning innocence, and says he is extremely relieved to see that she managed to escape safely. The professor approaches and asks anxiously if he happened to see a headless knight revived by black magic nearby. He lies, saying he saw no creature with that description, leaving Margaret even more confused by the state of the location. The boy explains that the area was already completely destroyed like that when he arrived following the forest wolves. She distrusts the answer because she doesn't sense any other powerful presence and wonders if he might be hiding his strength. Margaret decides to accept the justification for now and makes a point of thanking him on behalf of the entire student class. Rode suggests leaving the thanks aside and warns that her torn clothes will end up worrying the other students. The professor looks at herself, embarrassed, and agrees that she cannot appear before the youths in that pitiful state. With that, she channels her light magic, concentrating a glowing energy to restore her torn garments on the spot. Now wearing her perfectly clean and recovered clothes, she turns with a smile to speak with the protagonist. But to her surprise, the boy simply disappeared from the spot in a mysterious way without her even noticing. Already far from there, Rode advances through the shadows, confident that the traces of dark mana will guide him to the tome Kent mentioned. The boy is impressed to notice that the concentration of dark magic in that place is incredibly strong and frightening. He observes the entrance to a dark cave and concludes that this is the exact place where the undead knight was resurrected. Before him, a mystical rift overflowing with dense and frightening purple mist appears, blocking the deep passageway. Without showing any fear, the protagonist simply crosses the purple magical barrier with total tranquility. Upon reaching the other side, he lets out a slight smile and murmurs, satisfied with finally having found his great objective. Before his eyes is revealed a gigantic blue summoning circle, glowing intensely in the middle of that ancient ruin. Rode makes a quick movement, dispersing the residual energies and approaching the center of that mysterious place. With authority in his voice, he orders the shadows and lesser spirits to get away from there immediately, clearing the path. A crash echoes through the underground chamber as the protagonist's power completely dominates the gloomy environment. He examines the blue stones on the floor and realizes that someone used that artificial circle to revive the legendary warrior. The boy concludes that this conspiracy caused the out-of-control state in the forest, and that there is a mastermind acting secretly in the shadows. He picks up one of the magic stones and dismisses the amateur spell, stating that it is a true offense to necromancy. With a victorious smile, Rode puts away the dark mana stones, knowing they will be extremely useful for his future plans. Margaret watches the students from afar, relieved to realize that the Death Knight did not reach them. She approaches, asking if everyone has finished their tasks, and warning that they will return to the academy as soon as everyone arrives. Claire warns worriedly that Rode has not returned yet and tells that a terrible mana hurricane arose right after he entered the woods. The professor seeks to confirm the information by asking if the vortex really appeared after the boy ran into the forest. Margaret deduces that Rode defeated the knight alone and remains pensive, trying to gauge how powerful the boy really is. Anderson mocks the protagonist, calling him a coward and suggesting he fled in fear upon feeling the frightening energy pressure. Serious, Professor Margaret cuts off the malicious comments, stating that Rode will return soon and that everyone will leave together. Another boy mocks him, doubting that he will return, and comments laughing that the protagonist must have ended up in the belly of some fierce wolf. Anderson takes the opportunity to question the professor about the mysterious energy explosion and the strange behavior of the forest wolves. Margaret downplays the occurrence, explaining that it was just a common energy eruption and guarantees that the forest is now completely safe. Anderson boasts mentally, thinking Rode just got lucky earlier and swearing he could do the same thing in a much superior way. The protagonist reappears, walking calmly, while Anderson mocks him, calling him a cowardly deserter in front of everyone. Claire runs over worriedly to ask if he is okay, and Rode responds calmly, assuring her that he is perfectly safe. Anderson is completely embarrassed and nervous upon realizing that his childish provocations were totally ignored by the boy. Margaret observes the protagonist closely in an intrigued manner, still trying to understand the mystery surrounding his true strength. Rode hands over the wolf's claw as proof of his completed task and suggests that the group finally return to the Magic Academy. The professor notices that all the dark mana has vanished from the forest and strongly suspects that the boy was the one who destroyed the source of evil there. She shakes her head, smiling as she remembers that her top priority as an instructor is simply to protect each and every one of her students there. Margaret officially ends the day's practical class and instructs all the students to get ready for the trip back home. The school carriages travel back down the road toward the imposing and majestic academy that rises atop the green hill. Meanwhile, a mysterious hooded silhouette walks silently inside the underground ruins of the ancient tome. The intruder stops at the center of the destroyed large summoning circle, observing with attention the traces left at the location. He bends down to touch the stone floor and realizes with indignation that his special magical formation has been completely ruined. The hooded man deduces that the intruder, besides finding the base, also defeated the knight, and wonders if some Imperial Grandmaster did that. Consumed by fury, he swears with a frightening look that he will mercilessly eliminate anyone who tries to interfere with his future plans. The next day, activities return to normal inside the beautiful and calm main campus of the prestigious Royal Magic Academy. Rode walks thoughtfully, reflecting on what Margaret actually witnessed, and decides he will use the chance to ask about the tier of death. Upon arriving in the open hallways of the institution, he notices a large movement of people gathering at a certain spot. A young blonde student in a white uniform and elegant posture walks imposingly, catching the attention of everyone around him in the corridors. Several girls are completely charmed by his presence, commenting on how handsome he is and how different from ordinary frivolous nobles. Anderson observes the scene with deep irritation and disdain, venting his jealousy because of the military status the blonde boy's family holds. Rode approaches silently from behind and mockingly asks if he really hates the guy who just walked by that much. Anderson infuriates himself, claiming that he is the one who should be popular, and states that the young blonde is his greatest rival inside the school. The protagonist reflects mentally, remembering that in his past life he used to envy that boy, but realizes that now it doesn't matter. Suddenly, firm footsteps echo through the hallway, catching the attention of the group of boys who were chatting distractedly over there. The young blonde stops in front of them and asks with a cold politeness to please make room in the path so he can pass freely. Anderson arrogantly refuses to make space and demands that the blonde rival be the one to move out of the way, generating immediate tension. The two stare at each other in an extremely tense and provocative way up close, with sparks almost coming from their looks of pure discontent. The other students observe the direct confrontation nervously, knowing that both noble families involved are incredibly influential. Professor Margaret appears holding her book and suggests with irony that they resolve their differences in today's physical combat practical class. Kaya immediately apologizes politely to the professor and decides to withdraw from the spot with his companions to avoid fights. Anderson provokes him one last time, setting up a score to settle for the practical class, and grumbles, calling the rival an arrogant show off. While everyone disperses, Rhodes seizes the opportunity to approach the professor, seeking to have a private conversation with her, already inside her private office. Margaret settles into her armchair and asks the protagonist what he wishes to discuss that is so important. The boy asks directly if he could receive an official waiver to miss this afternoon's physical combat class. With a shrewd smile, Margaret inquires if he wants to avoid trouble or if he is just trying to hide his real strength from the other peers. The protagonist is embarrassed by the instructor's spot on perception and sighs lightly, realizing he won't be able to fool her easily. She comments that he certainly has a second secret motive for seeking her out, and Rhodes admits sincerely that she is entirely right. The boy then gets straight to the point and questions her if she has ever heard of a legendary mystical item known as the Tear of Death. The professor confirms that she knows the Millennium Artifact and reveals that it is kept in the Academy Vault because no one can decipher its use. Margaret stares at him in surprise and asks out loud if he really wishes to obtain the Tear of Death. With total seriousness and determination, the protagonist simply confirms his desire, saying yes to her. She apologizes in a friendly manner, revealing that unfortunately, she does not have the authority to remove the valuable item from the vault. Rhodes is thoughtful upon hearing the answer, but the professor soon suggests a special condition to help him get. Margaret promises to introduce him to an influential former professor as long as the boy participates in the practical class and shows his real strength. The protagonist lets out a slight ironic smile, mentally surprised by that teacher's cleverness and persistence. Without many options to get the artifact, Rhodes ends up yielding to the agreement and accepts to participate in the physical combat class. Later, in the large training arena, the academy students are already starting to gather for the start of the practical activities. Eleanor, a beautiful silver-haired young woman, stretches her muscles gracefully, catching everyone's attention on the court. The boys whisper in amazement at her beauty and comment in murmurs about the mysterious and influential family she belongs to. The crowd notices when young Master Kaya starts walking toward the girl, fueling the rumors about them even more. He approaches with a friendly smile, greeting the young woman and asking politely how her grandfather's health is. Eleanor thanks the kindness with sympathy and responds cheerfully that the old man has been doing very well lately, but suddenly she spots someone walking in the back of the gym and widens her eyes upon recognizing her true master. Without thinking twice, the girl completely ignores Kaya and turns radiantly to go talk to Rhodes, who has just arrived. Upon noticing her approach, Rhodes quickly puts his finger to his lips, making a discreet sign for her to keep a secret. The young woman immediately covers her mouth, startled, and obeys her master's silent command not to reveal his identity there. Kaya is completely in shock and has a gloomy expression upon realizing that he was simply brushed aside in front of everyone. He stares at Rhodes with deep indignation and jealousy, wondering who that insignificant boy could be for Eleanor to prefer him over others. A sudden crash echoes loudly through the training gym, catching the attention of all the students present. Anderson appears furious, shouting loudly that Kaya is going to pay dearly for all the humiliation he made him go through during that morning. Already irritated by the previous situation, Kaya cracks his knuckles, accepting the challenge, and warns that he is in a terrible mood today. Meanwhile, a shaved-headed bully student approaches Rhodes, provoking him with an offensive nickname from behind. The bully stares at him mockingly, remembering that the boy also got in Kaya's way, and threatens him, saying he is going to break him all up. At the same time, the crowd begins to gather enthusiastically upon noticing that Anderson and Kaya are about to start a physical duel. The instructor positions himself in the center of the arena and warns that he doesn't want to know what personal grudges exist between the two. He dictates the rules of the venue firmly, recalling that any use of attack magic is strictly prohibited during sparring. With a malicious smile, Anderson reinforces his request to fight Kaya, guaranteeing that he is as good at physical combat as he is at magic. The professor questions whether the young blonde agrees to accept the direct clash, and Kaya simply confirms without hesitation. Anderson flashes a macabre smile while Kaya warns him dryly not to complain about the consequences of what comes next. The two assume their starting positions, and Anderson provokes by saying he wants to see the rival maintain his superior attitude after eating dust. The female students squeeze through the crowd, worried, and comment with Claire about the dangerous duel about to start right in the middle. One of the female students confesses her fear, explaining that Kaya trained advanced military combat tactics directly with his older brother. Anderson advances furiously, shouting that he had been waiting so long for that chance to break that arrogant opponent's teeth. Totally focused and in absolute silence, Kaya just waits for the opponent's violent approach with a perfect combat guard. Anderson delivers a fast and aggressive blow with all his strength, but the blonde adversary dodges with extreme ease and mastery, taking advantage of the opening left in the attack. Kaya counterattacks in a surgical and relentless way, landing a well-placed hit on the opponent. The violent impact generates a crash, throwing Anderson away until he collides brutally against the training arena floor. The female audience goes wild, celebrating the quick victory with enthusiastic shouts about how strong and amazing the young blonde is. One of the girls praises Kaya's beauty and silver, spoon background, labeling him a Prince Charming while Claire just watches in silence. Kaya stands before the fallen opponent and warns coldly for him to give up once and for all for not being a match for his skills. He demands a formal apology in exchange for forgiving all the insolence and provocations made by Anderson up to that point. Feeling humiliated, Anderson spits on the floor furiously and shouts, refusing to accept defeat while trying to get back up at all costs. Desperate, he charges in a final reckless attack, throwing a messy punch in an attempt to hit the rival any way he can. Kaya stares at him with total contempt, stating that Anderson himself sought out that painful end and prepares to retaliate. With an overwhelming punch to the face, he knocks Anderson out once and for all, making him crash unconscious onto the arena with great impact. The entire audience of students falls into complete silence, widening their eyes in shock at the brutal and rapid outcome of that combat. Margaret watches everything from above in an analytical and serious manner, showing no type of surprise at Kaya's impressive strength. The bully takes the moment to intimidate Rode, stating that soon the protagonist will be on his knees begging for mercy too. He cracks his fists with disdain, murmuring that even after reincarnating there are still arrogant fools who need to learn a good lesson there. The bully delivers a violent punch against Rode, shouting a warning never to dare cross his path ever again. Rode dodges easily, remembering that in his former life he solved everything with his army and rarely fought hand to hand. The boy ponders that this doesn't mean he hasn't mastered martial arts and concludes that he doesn't need effort to win. In the blink of an eye, the bully is knocked down to the floor, and Rode looks down at him coldly, stating that he is no match for his strength. Kaya watches the scene and widens his eyes in extreme shock to see his ally defeated with such ease by Rode. The bully's body collides brutally against the wooden floor of the arena, breaking the planks due to the immense impact of the blow. He slides unconscious across the arena, kicking up dust, and leaving all the students present in a complete state of disbelief. Kaya observes the defeated companion on the floor, and his expression becomes even more serious upon realizing the real danger before him. Professor Margaret watches everything very surprised and intrigued, confirming with her own eyes her suspicions about Rode. In the distance, the girls comment, startled, wondering if it really was the mild-mannered Rode who pulled off that absurd move. The protagonist remains in his combat stance, emanating an aura of unshakable authority that shocks everyone in the training arena. Mentally, the boy laments the occurrence, realizing that even holding back his strength, he ended up overdoing it due to the opponent's fragility. Kaya approaches his past-out colleague to evaluate his health state, and stands in complete silence with his pride wounded on the spot. He gets up, walking slowly toward the protagonist, and asks in a threatening way if his name is really Rode. Kaya stares at him with hatred in his eyes, questioning whether it was really necessary to use so much extreme violence during a simple training session. Rode counters calmly, stating that he controlled his power well and guarantees mockingly that the defeated boy will be perfectly fine. The protagonist points at the unconscious Anderson and says Kaya has no right to complain after what he did to the other colleague. Kaya is consumed by overwhelming fury, and his body begins to emanate a dense and frightening aura of pure dark energy right there. The female students panic, shouting that Rode is in trouble for having provoked the most dangerous adversary in the Magic Academy. The other boys whisper, astonished at the audacity of the failed heir of the Morris family in defying the powerful Master Kaya. Eleanor covers her face, very distressed, but her real concern is whether her Master Rode won't end up severely hurting the rival. Margaret watches everything with a smile on her face, thinking that this is the ideal chance to see Rode's power in order to give him the item. Kaya's body trembles with hatred as he positions himself to attack, discharging all his repressed physical strength toward Rode. The students comment enthusiastically upon noticing that Kaya will use his legendary secret military technique that destroys everything even without using mana. He prepares his special Iron Fist attack, concentrating an overwhelming, crushing force to deliver the lethal blow. The young blonde advances like a swift lightning bolt, proving that he didn't use even half of his real agility during his fight against Anderson. Seeing that the protagonist remains motionless without trying to dodge the blow, the spectators scream desperately, thinking he will die. Kaya's massive fist comes down with absurd speed against Rode's face in a direct attack that seems impossible to stop. With a deafening crash, Rode blocks the mortal attack, using only one of his hands in an extremely calm and secure manner. Kaya is left perplexed and speechless upon realizing that his rock-destroying punch was stopped effortlessly by the boy before him. With a violent and quick pull, the protagonist totally destabilizes his rival's posture, pushing him backward with ease. Kaya sweats cold with rage, remembering all the years of rigorous training, and refuses to accept that he is losing to a failure. Rode reprimands the opponent, stating that if that blow had hit Anderson, the other boy would spend months lying on a stretcher. The students watch the scene incredulously, inventing excuses is that Kaya must have held back his strength so as not to hurt the opponent. While the crowd defends him, Kaya ignores the comments and once again concentrates his dark aura with even more fury to attack again. He roars, unleashing his chain fist technique, preparing a devastating sequence of rapid punches against the boy. A furious storm of rapid punches advances toward Rode, covering his entire field of vision with insane speed right there. Rode observes the frenetic onslaught with total coldness, evaluating mentally that the blonde opponent should withstand a counterattack well. The protagonist clenches his right fist, concentrating an absurd amount of physical strength to prepare the definitive response blow. An absurd crash shakes the entire training arena when Rode delivers a direct punch, generating a massive shockwave in the air. With his eyes glowing intensely, the protagonist ponders whether he should increase the intensity of his strength a bit more to finish the fight. The fanatic cheering crowd continues screaming and supporting Kaya, anxious to see the arrogant opponent destroyed once and for all. Right there, the protagonist's bare feet touch the floor with firmness and elegance as he assumes absolute control of that physical dispute. He pats his hand on his clothes, brushing off the dust with disdain, and calmly asks if that weak attack was all the opponent had. Kaya falls into complete panic upon seeing that the adversary came out totally unscathed after directly receiving the blow he trained for years to master. Rode assumes his offensive stance and warns with an icy look that after taking so many punches, it is finally his turn to attack. Eleanor covers her eyes in despair, anticipating the complete destruction her master will cause to the blonde adversary in the very next second. He laments having to abandon the discreet disguise, but knows he needs to do that to conquer the mystical tier artifact. The protagonist's fist moves at such an extreme speed that it cuts through the air, generating a devastating wind trail in the training arena. A colossal illusion of a demonic fist comes down with crushing power toward Kaya, completely swallowing his frightened figure right there. Kaya is left completely terrified up close upon seeing Rode's massive fist coming straight at him with no chance of defense. The colossal impact of the punch generates a destructive wind wave that hurls Kaya's body violently backward into the arena. With a devastating crash, the young blonde collides against the bleacher wall, destroying the structure with the impact of the blow. He collapses completely unconscious on the floor with a bloody face after directly receiving Rode's overwhelming power. The female students watch the scene stupefied, unable to believe that the guy considered useless defeated the school's strongest prodigy. Claire watches the scene shocked and finally realizes that the strength Rode showed in the tavern that day wasn't just a stroke of luck. Other female students run distressed to tend to Kaya while shouting at Rode, accusing him of acting maliciously. In a simple training session, the noble boys gather to curse the protagonist, claiming that Kaya would never lose to him in a real, true battle. The group demands that Rode apologize immediately, insulting him for having been expelled from his own noble family because of his attitude. With an icy gaze, the boy reflects that in his past life he would have already sent his undead army to eliminate all the annoying ones. But before he does anything, Eleanor gives a shout of enough, ordering imposingly that everyone shut their mouths immediately right there on the spot. Rode turns around, surprised, to observe the girl who decided to intervene in the discussion in his defense before the entire class of students. She rages furiously, questioning who they think they are to judge the attitudes and immense power of young Master Rode. Like that, the young blonde argues that if Kaya's blows had hit anyone else, they would be dead, and tells the weaklings not to embarrass themselves. The students are left totally perplexed and whisper, not understanding the reason Eleanor is defending the excluded guy tooth and nail. Without caring about the gossip, she firmly grips Rode's arm, calling him with respect and deciding to get him out of that environment right away. Eleanor pulls him out of the arena, saying out loud for him not to waste his precious time with that kind of insignificant people. Under the watchful gaze of everyone present in the gym, the two walk calmly toward the exit of the training facilities. Kaya begins to regain consciousness with difficulty and swears furiously to take revenge on the protagonist with a lot of hatred in his heart. Observing the doe's exit from the top of the bleachers, Professor Margaret maintains a pensive and very focused countenance on what she saw. She smiles, satisfied, confirming her suspicions that the boy's power surpasses the imaginable, and decides to introduce him to the old professor. Already inside an elegant and luxurious palace, Rode questions the young woman if that attitude of confronting the others really won't cause trouble. He reminds her that her influential family has good relations with Kaya's allies and fears that this might harm their status at court. The young woman dismisses it with a cute smile, stating that in reality she never supported that stuck-up kid, let alone his family. She swears absolute loyalty, saying that her entire influential dynasty supports Rode and will cut ties with whoever he dislikes at court. The boy stares at her curiously and asks if she is absolutely sure that making such a serious and drastic decision like that is okay. She smiles cheerfully, explaining that thanks to his help her grandfather recovered his health and their clan is not afraid of suffering retaliation from rivals. The protagonist then pulls the glowing blue stone from his pocket and warns that he will need her clan's help to investigate something mysterious. He explains that someone is using black magic to conspire in the shadows, and the young woman guarantees that her entire influential house will act under his orders. In another part of the city, inside a dark and silent room, Kaya finds himself depressed and pensive after the shameful defeat. He contacts his older brother through a magical projection, desperately begging for help to take revenge on the rival. The imposingly built older brother listens attentively as Kaya reports furiously all the public humiliation he suffered from Rode. The blonde youth continues to instigate his stronger brother by focusing on the intimate closeness Eleanor showed toward the despicable Rode. The imposing armored warrior reflects seriously on the gravity of the situation and murmurs back, stating that he has understood the problem. With his gaze glowing red, the warrior promises to send a dangerous and feared assassin who will be passing through the region to help him. Kaya reacts euphorically upon confirming that it is the fearsome and relentless mercenary known throughout the empire by the terrible moniker of Dire Wolf. A malicious smile appears on Kaya's face as he celebrates cheerfully, guaranteeing that with the mercenary's help, Rode will be wiped off the earth forever. Sometime later, in another sector of the prestigious institution, an elegant wooden office door opens smoothly in the hallway. The young protagonist steps inside Professor Margaret's private room, seeking to follow through on the agreement they made previously about the item. Margaret turns around smiling and praises his exhibition in the arena, confirming confessing that his fantastic victory confirmed her suspicions about the forest once and for all. Rhodes smiles calmly, brushing it off modestly, and says he only fought seriously to be able to secure the artifact he needs so much. She explains that the coveted artifact is in the possession of an elderly tutor and invites him to accompany her to the man's private laboratory. The professor instructs the young boy to prepare himself well mentally, as the former tutor is known for possessing a very unstable and difficult temperament. The two walk together through the interior of the old and imposing magic research center of the prestigious Royal Magic Academy. In the laboratory, an elderly scientist with round glasses calmly stirs a glowing cauldron containing a mysterious and dense greenish potion. Margaret introduces Rhodes with pride, but the tutor grumbles angrily, asking them not to come and disturb his important activity right now. The instructor whispers to the boy, confirming that the coveted artifact he desires is under the custody and protection of that eccentric old man. She compliments by saying that it will be up solely to Rhodes to convince the stubborn professor to hand over the artifact, and the boy thanks her for the opportunity. Upon examining the complex magical circuits drawn on the stone table, the boy deduces that the scientist is trying to perform resurrection spells. Focused on his task, the eccentric professor pours the glowing green potion directly over the inert animal's body atop the altar. Experienced Professor Gustav watches the altar closely, waiting to see the first signs of life in his test subject. Suddenly, the cauldron explodes, releasing an intense and violent burst of green smoke and sparks across the room. Margaret cries out in fright for the professor as she watches a large crack of unstable energy spread dangerously across the altar. He laments his latest failure in frustration, unable to understand why the vital energy described in the ancient texts did not stabilize the test subject. The female teacher thinks Gustav is totally obsessed with resurrection, but his advanced studies of the soul remain stalled right there. Rhodes reflects that this world's understanding of souls is far too superficial, preventing them from creating true, high-level necromancers. Gustav picks up one of the vials thoughtfully, pondering whether the crucial mistake was putting too little of the magical potion into the formula, or perhaps the greenish potion contained too little vital energy to manage to reanimate the body of the inert animal resting atop the circle. Another violent explosion of green smoke bursts through the windows of the imposing research tower, startling everyone around the area. Rhodes realizes that trying to use vital energy to reanimate the dead is a terrible mistake, because the two opposing forces simply cancel each other out entirely. The elderly man shouts furiously at the repeated failure, unable to understand why the exact instructions from the ancient books failed once again. Young Rhodes decides to intervene in the situation and calmly suggests that the professor stop using potions packed with pure vital energy on the test subject. The older man gets annoyed by the newcomer's audacity and warns harshly that the fact Margaret praised him does not give him the right to offer opinions. He asks with disdain what a young novice who has never studied basic soul theory could possibly understand about resurrection magic. The stubborn professor turns his back, ordering them out of there immediately so he can continue his scientific research without distractions. Rhodes explains seriously that injecting vital energy into a dead being is like injecting poison, preventing the soul from managing to stabilize in the body. Gustav flies into a rage upon hearing that, arguing that he used the miraculous water from the fountain of life, and accuses him of arrogance for calling it poison. Rhodes explains that to deal with death, one must focus on the essence of the dead, and suggests that he add ancient graveyard dirt to the rune circle. Margaret panics in silence, calling Rhodes crazy for contradicting the theories of the proud and temperamental professor at that moment. However, the experienced tutor is left completely paralyzed and thoughtful as he reflects deeply on the innovative theory spoken by the young novice. Determined to test the idea, he collects a handful of ancient graveyard dirt and carefully pours it over the magic circle and the inert body. The very next second, the feline's body begins to float in the air, wrapped in a bright and stable mystic energy that radiates a strong presence. The older man's eyes widen, overcome by immense hope as he realizes his millennial research is finally about to achieve a major triumph. Margaret is extremely stunned as she watches that impressive change in the test subject, unable to believe that Rhodes' suggestion worked. Road reflects in silence, knowing that because that soul had been scattered for a long time, a much higher level of necromancy would be necessary. He secretly decides to use a bit of his true dark power to guide the lost soul back into the feline's body on the stone table. The protagonist's gaze shines brightly as he evokes his absolute monarch authority to summon the animal's spirit back. The glowing beams of energy converge perfectly and in a coordinated manner toward the small body, establishing the final bond of life there. Under Road's supreme command, the soul is successfully restored, causing the feline's bright green eyes to open full of vitality. The feline lets out a tender meow and walks on its feet across the table, although the protagonist knows the spell will last for a maximum of 7 days there. Gustav and Margaret stare at the miracle with wide eyes and open mouths, unable to contain their sheer astonishment at the boy's success. Overcome by immense euphoria, the professor grabs the young man by the shoulders, desperately begging to know his name, and where he learned that Margaret recovers from the shock and officially introduces the boy with a huge, victorious smile plastered across her face at that moment. The older man exclaims with emotion that Road has accomplished something revolutionary and declares him a true genius who will change the course of all magic in the Empire. Margaret is left extremely dumbfounded and shocked to see the legendary tutor praise the young student so enthusiastically and warmly. The older man begs to know what else he knows, while Road evades him with modesty, claiming only to see the afterlife in a different way. Gustav suddenly remembers the real reason for their visit and mentions that Margaret had spoken of the boy's interest in the tier of death. Without any hesitation, the experienced professor pulls the very handsome, glowing amulet containing the coveted blue artifact from his pocket and displays it to Road. He offers the valuable pendant to the protagonist, provided that the young boy agrees to fulfill a simple special condition for him right there. The tutor extends his hand, handing over the item, and reveals that his sole and greatest wish is for Road to officially become his research assistant. He promises to obtain even rarer materials and states enthusiastically that together the two of them will rewrite the entire history of the realm's great mages. Road smiles with mental satisfaction upon realizing that having access to such valuable and rare materials for free will be an incredibly useful bonus right there. Margaret protests, reminding him that Road is a novice, but Gustav tells her to shut up, claiming she lacks the intelligence required for the position. The female teacher grows extremely furious at Gustav's harsh words, while Road merely watches the comical argument awkwardly from there. The boy bows politely, accepting the generous offer, and states that it will be a true honor to be able to collaborate on the scientist's research. He celebrates inwardly, knowing that having an official title and free access to the private laboratory will make his future goals much easier. The professor extends his hand, handing over a very handsome golden key, and warns that the boy will be able to make use of that laboratory whenever he wishes. He adds proudly that the mystic key will also serve as the free pass that proves his new and prestigious identity as an assistant. Margaret sweats nervously upon realizing that her quiet student has suddenly become her equal, ranking coworker, and wonders how that happened. 2 days pass peacefully until night falls over the busy Crystal Tavern, illuminating the quiet stone residential street. Sitting comfortably in the tavern, young Kaya takes a sip of his wine, silently awaiting his ally's arrival. The butler enters the private room, warning that the fearsome man he was waiting for so eagerly has finally arrived at the location. The door opens, revealing the imposing and shadowy silhouette of the dangerous mercenary, who steps into the room with calm strides. That right there is Rennie, the professional assassin, known by the nickname Terrible Wolf and famous for his extreme coldness and precision. Kaya stands up and greets him with great enthusiasm, praising the grand fame the mercenary carries across the entire realm. Rennie interrupts the compliments with disdain, telling the boy to get straight to the point and state quickly who he wants eliminated. Kaya grows deeply irritated by the assassin's arrogant attitude and lack of respect, but swallows his wounded pride on the spot. He hands over a plentiful pouch containing the deposit in gold coins and promises to give the rest of the payment as soon as the target is dead. Kaya displays the file with Road's portrait, explaining that the target is merely a useless guy from a decaying noble family at the academy. The mercenary tosses the paper aside, letting out an ironic laugh, finding it absurd to be hired to kill just a simple student. He looks seriously with his glowing red eye and warns with contempt that he has no time to waste on childish games in the city. Kaya tries to convince him by explaining that the boy allied himself with the heiress of the Ashblade clan, and reinforces that this is also an order from his brother. Upon hearing the mention of the Ashblade clan, Rennie's expression changes completely, showing that he has grasped the true gravity of the mission. The assassin agrees to carry out the job because it is a request from his brother, but demands a final payment of 5,000 gold coins for the task. Kaya agrees immediately to the new demand, shouting furiously that he will pay any amount as long as Rode is killed soon. He asks for absolute discretion so as not to involve his family, and Rennie guarantees that the assassin's code of ethics prevents revealing the client. The terrible wolf flashes a scary smile and states with extreme arrogance that his success rate on missions is always absolute. With an icy look, Kaya celebrates mentally, declaring that that cold night will be the last and final night of life for his hated rival. Later, the dangerous assassin hides in the shadows of a building's rooftop, coldly watching the deserted street where the target will pass. With a scary red mask covering his face, the terrible wolf prepares to act following the information from his employer. He watches the dark alleyway, knowing that is the exact path the young student usually takes daily to return home. Rode appears walking calmly through the alley while the assassin smiles victoriously from above, already picturing his fat reward in gold. The protagonist walks thoughtfully, remembering the exhausting resurrection research that prevented him from using the new item on his servant Blady seat. However, he stops walking and raises his gaze coldly upon realizing that there is a hostile and dangerous presence stalking him from the top of the buildings. Rode notices that the intruder does not even hide his murderous intent and estimates that his strength easily surpasses Margaret's abilities. A red, devastating trail cuts through the air at high speed, coming from above toward the protagonist to execute him in silence. Rode dodges effortlessly and wonders if that mysterious assassin could be the owner of the magic circle he destroyed in the ancient tongue. The boy stretches in a mocking fashion and decides the best way to resolve the question will be simply to ask the rival directly. The mercenary approaches, brandishing his sharp dagger, and mocks him, asking if that dark alley is the spot chosen for his grave. The protagonist glares at him with an icy and frightening look, radiating a blue energy that makes the atmosphere of the place change drastically. Upon noticing that crushing and terrifying pressure, the terrible wolf widens his eyes, overcome by a brief moment of unconscious panic. Overcome by the anger of the mockery, the assassin rushes forward swiftly, unleashing his ultimate attack against the figure of the young man standing in front. He executes his special shadow assassination technique, delivering a sweeping red energy slash straight to the neck. A violent metallic sound echoes through the alley, followed by the sound of fresh blood droplets splashing continuously on the stone floor there. Rode catches the sharp blade directly with his bare hand and demands to know with a scary look who the mastermind behind that assassination attempt was. The assassin panics upon seeing that his most powerful lethal attack of a lifetime was stopped with extreme ease by the boy's hand. With a quick and abrupt movement, the mercenary's weapon is thrown far away, breaking his attack bond definitively in the contest. The terrible wolf retreats in fright, falling to the ground while Rode corners him in a sovereign manner, maintaining absolute dominance over the situation there. The assassin realizes he has faced an adversary infinitely superior to him and concludes in despair that his only way out there is to flee from the spot. Rennie turns into a dark mist and tries to escape at high speed through the shadows under the watchful and icy eyes of the protagonist. Rode merely watches him flee calmly and warns coldly that he possesses countless very efficient ways to make him confess the truth. Mystic chains of blue energy begin to spread at high speed through the alley, tracking the exact path the mercenary ran. Suddenly, the powerful ghost servant Blade Seed emerges from the shadows, completely blocking the assassin's escape route in the dead-end alley. The mercenary retreats in terror upon coming face to face with the imposing skeletal figure of blue flames that blocks his passage there. Without giving any chance for reaction, the loyal servant moves forward silently, immobilizing the assassin from behind with surgical precision. A powerful and sweeping punch hits Rennie's stomach, making him spit blood and completely lose his breath from the force of the impact. The loyal swordsman lifts the beaten assassin's body from behind while Rode approaches and asks calmly if he is ready. The mercenary spits blood furiously and threatens Rode, saying the boy will regret it bitterly if he doesn't let him go immediately right then and there. Rode simply stares at him with total contempt and warns that if he refuses to confess, he will use much worse methods to get the information. The protagonist extends his right hand, conjuring his special soul manipulation spell to extract the truth by force from his mind. The protagonist activates his forbidden necromancy art of memory echo to invade the assassin's mind without any mercy. Immediately, the memories of the moment when Kaya ordered Rode's assassination out of sheer revenge emerge clearly before him. Upon discovering the truth, Rode concludes with disdain that Kaya's proud family is literally digging their own grave right there. The injured assassin begs desperately for mercy, threatening that his brother Bruce will never forgive him if anything happens to him. Without caring, Rode warns with extreme coldness that it won't be long before their entire family is completely wiped off the map. The boy flashes a scary smile, decreeing that the soul of that strong assassin will serve as a perfect feast for his servants. A colossal skeletal dragon of blue flames emerges from the ground under the protagonist's supreme command, generating a loud rumble in the alleyway. The assassin screams in absolute despair, failing to understand what kind of monstrous and colossal creature is about to swallow him right there. A small skeletal monster runs agilely, carrying the defeated man's remains back into the shadows under his orders. The mercenary soul is devoured once, and for all amidst a reddish flash, leaving the alley once again in total, icy silence. He reflects that the rival dynasty is very influential in the north and decides to wait for the exact moment before dealing his final blow of revenge. Meanwhile, inside the luxurious Crystal Tavern, Kaya drinks his wine happily, celebrating the mission's success in advance. He smiles mischievously, imagining that by this hour the despicable Rode must have been definitely eliminated from his path. The blonde youth orders the butler to distribute invitations to the entire class, celebrating his great and definitive victory with a big party. The next day, Kaya's golden invitations begin to be delivered to the students, marking the start of the celebrations at the academy. Eleanor watches the invitation intrigued, unable to understand Kaya's motives for suddenly deciding to throw a luxurious party at his family's house. She distracts herself from her thoughts upon noticing the approach of Rode, who walks calmly and casually toward her meeting spot there. The young woman breaks into a huge, radiant smile on her face as she greets her dear master, who has just arrived to talk with her in the room. He notices her worried expression and questions whether all that sudden restlessness is due to the invitation envelope in her hands. She displays the letter, explaining that Kaya decided to throw a big party for the whole class for some mysterious reason unknown to her. The boy analyzes the situation, while the young woman confesses with contempt that she cannot stand Kaya and has zero interest in attending the event. With a slight, knowing smile on his face, Rode suggests that she attend anyway. As he already guesses the real reason for the celebration, Eleanor walks beside him and points out with surprise that Kaya didn't bother to send an invitation to Rode due to their disagreements. The young woman deduces that the exclusion was motivated by the earlier beating and criticizes the extreme childishness and lack of noble posture of the rival guy. That very night, carriages begin arriving, bringing noble guests to the imposing and illuminated facade of Kaya's mansion. The strict security guard at the entrance warns firmly that only guests carrying official invitations will be allowed into the hall. Eleanor hands over the official envelope, announcing her name out loud, and introduces Rode as her special companion for the banquet. The staff member grows completely nervous and hesitant upon recognizing the influential young woman, but noticing the presence of the unwanted gray-haired guy. The other guard approaches in a rush, whispering discreet advice into his colleague's ear to avoid causing any kind of commotion there. With no options, they wave them through, welcoming Eleanor with a forced smile, and also allowing the entry of her young companion. Rode thanks her cleverness for getting him inside the party, and the girl apologizes cheerfully for the trouble caused at the entrance there. The imposing double gold door opens, revealing the entrance to the immense and luxurious main banquet hall of the clan's palace. In the dressing room, the young man fixes himself before the mirror, while his henchman expresses concern over the fact that the assassin Rennie has not returned. The henchman hesitates and asks apprehensively if there is a real possibility that the fearsome mercenary failed to eliminate Rode. Kaya shouts furiously, telling him to shut up, and rants that the terrible wolf is a legendary assassin incapable of failing at a simple job. He hurries out, ordering them to leave the rest of the payment in gold coins ready, because the mercenary should return at any moment. The main hall is packed with high society noble guests drinking and talking under the light of immense crystal chandeliers. Kaya flashes a greedy smile, thinking that without the rival in his way, he will manage to marry Eleanor and inherit all the fortune of her dynasty. In the middle of the hall, the female guests debate curiously about the real reason for the party and conclude that something extremely grand must have happened. Eleanor appears dazzling in her very handsome blue party dress, catching the attention of everyone present in the luxurious banquet hall. Upon spotting her, Kaya breaks into a wide smile from ear to ear and decides to approach immediately to court the heiress of the rival dynasty. The host approaches in an elegant manner, extending a glass of wine, and cordially invites her to toast that special night with him. Without the slightest interest, the young woman glares at him with total boredom and politely rejects the invitation, stating that she must refuse his drink there. Kaya is left disconcerted, but a mysterious voice coming right behind him ironically offers to toast with the young host in the hall. The blonde widens his eyes insanely, breaking into a cold sweat upon immediately recognizing that icy voice he never expected to hear again. The protagonist reveals himself standing, smiling cynically with glowing eyes, and asks mockingly if they are not going to toast together there anymore. In complete terror and despair, Kaya completely loses his balance and crashes backward, knocking bottles and chairs onto the party's floor. Fallen on the floor, the host points a finger trembling with dread toward the protagonist, screaming desperately whether he is a human or a ghost. Rode walks calmly toward him, looking down at him with total contempt, and asks coldly what the blonde rival thinks about that. Kaya sweats from panic, unable to accept that he is alive, and questions himself mentally in complete despair where the assassin Rennie could be. With a serene gaze, Rode repeats the assassin's name and asks if he is referring to the man who tried to attack him on the road. Suddenly, the boy nonchalantly tosses the shattered remains of the dagger that belonged to the dangerous mercenary onto the floor. Kaya collapses in terror upon recognizing Rennie's weaponry and realizes in despair that the legendary assassin indeed failed the mission. The blonde youth screams in complete despair and panic, demanding to know what Rode actually did to the ruthless hired mercenary. Rode simply stares at him in a silent and frightening manner, radiating a dense and threatening dark mist of pure mystic power. Eleanor remembers the mentioned name and comments with fright that the assassin known as Terrible Wolf is very famous in the Empire. With an icy look of hatred, Eleanor authoritatively demands that Kaya explain right there what his real connection to that assassin is. Totally terrified, Kaya tries to dodge the question, stammering desperately that it is all a terrible and regrettable misunderstanding. Eleanor retorts with extreme disgust, asking if he really thinks she will believe he didn't hire the assassin to kill Rode. The blonde youth desperately tries to hold her hand, swearing he can explain what happened, and swearing that all the blame for the conflict lies with Rode. But the heiress of the powerful Ashblade house interrupts him with a furious scream, ordering him to shut his mouth immediately right there. Eleanor confesses her contempt for the lame excuses and exposes that the secret party was held exclusively to celebrate Rode's death. She warns solemnly that she spoke with her grandfather and decrees the definitive end of any kind of alliance between the two dynasties. Starting from there, Kaya grits his teeth in hatred, furiously blaming the protagonist for completely ruining the entire reputation of his noble family. Without paying any more attention to the rival, the young woman turns her back and invites the boy to leave that regrettable party once and for all. The female students watch the scene dumbfounded, confused to see the heiress cut ties with Kaya because of the guy considered insignificant. Claire watches their departure looking very thoughtful and sad, confessing in whispers that that guy doesn't look anything like the Rode she knew. Under the starry night sky, the pair calmly descends the long stone staircase of the palace, leaving the property behind. Eleanor rants irritably about Kaya's audacity and praises the boy, stating that those fools would never understand Rode's true power. She ponders that the assassin was far too strong to take orders from Kaya and questions whether the entire Shadowthorn family might be involved in this. Rode agrees and warns that her clan was also a target of the conspiracy and that his own intervention ended up ruining the rivals' plan. The young woman is infuriated upon realizing that the rivals tried to take advantage of her grandfather's illness to confiscate her clan's possessions. Eleanor smiles brightly, remembering that thanks to Rode her grandfather recovered, and guarantees that her entire dynasty will act under his orders. The young necromancer assumes a deeply serious and focused expression as he makes the decision to act definitively against the rivals. With his eyes glowing intensely in blue, Rode orders coldly for the entire Shadowthorn family to be completely wiped off the map. Meanwhile, the darkness of the night covers the gigantic and imposing residential property belonging to the proud Shadowthorn family. Inside his private room, Kaya's older brother holds the communication talisman, which begins to crack in a mysterious way. Through the audio channel, Kaya reports in tears that the assassin Rennie failed the mission and that Rhodes showed up alive and very strong at the party. Bruce is extremely shocked and rants that it is impossible for the mercenary to have failed since he himself chose the warrior for the job. Desperate, Kaya screams that the powerful Ashblade family broke the alliance definitively and blames the rival for ruining all the plans. The imposing armored warrior takes a deep breath, holding back his fury, and warns dryly that he will return immediately to resolve the impasse. Kaya widens his eyes, overcome by a huge surge of hope upon confirming that his strongest brother will finally return to the city. A sadistic and insane smirk reappears on the boy's face, who celebrates knowing that this time Rode won't have any chance of escaping alive. 2 days pass quickly until the sunlight shines over the beautiful scientific research tower of the renowned Royal Institution. Inside his private laboratory, Rode fiddles with his potions thoughtfully, wondering why Kaya remains so quiet after the clash. The boy reasons, knowing very well that the blonde rival would never accept humiliation quietly, and wonders what he is planning there. Suddenly, eccentric Professor Gustav interrupts them with enthusiasm and orders harshly that the two of them prepare for a quick trip. The older man explains that he consumed almost all of his stocks of rare ingredients in his research and warns that they need to go shopping at the market. Rode recalls that mysterious mystic trade market is extremely exclusive, demanding a high level of power or status to enter. Margaret explains that, since the boy is now the tutor's assistant, he will accompany them and points out that will be a great chance to learn. The protagonist is intrigued, admitting mentally that he hadn't even suspected the existence of that mystic market in the north in his past life. The school carriage travels at high speed along the stone roads toward the large and busy commercial city neighboring the area. They finally arrive at the beautiful and populous merchant city of Nate, known as the biggest convergence point for merchants in the entire region. The trio walks through the crowded streets, while the female teacher explains that the place attracts mages from all over the continent in search of rare artifacts. They stopped in front of the sumptuous and imposing main building that houses the city's prestigious and exclusive magical transaction fair. The bald security guard of the place watches their approach with extreme attention upon recognizing the figure of the famous court scientist. He immediately bows respectfully and extends a warm welcome to Professor Gustav, opening the building's entrance right there on the spot. The boy notices the tutor's prestige and wonders if he will manage to find the necessary ingredients to unlock the power of his new pendant. Already inside the sumptuous hall, the general manager of the market introduces himself politely and places himself entirely at their disposal for assistance. The older man dismisses the formalities with impatience, demanding to be taken straight to the main vault, since he has no interest in cheap merchandise. The market manager agrees nervously and asks the noble visitors to accompany him to the restricted area of the sumptuous vault. Upon entering the imposing and private room, the manager kindly invites them to feel completely at ease to look at the items, but Professor Gustav waves dismissively, stating with zero patience that he has not the slightest interest in any of those goods. He demands harshly that they bring rare ingredients rich in vital energy and also funerary materials from ancient graves. Rode observes in silence a glowing blue bone inside a vial, evaluating that it is an unusual item, but nothing all that spectacular. He sighs lightly with disappointment upon noticing that the prestigious mystic market holds nothing revolutionary for his needs. He ponders that legendary, tier artifacts that truly change the fate of the world are extremely difficult to find at ordinary fairs. Margaret hears raised voices and Professor Gustav shouting furiously at another elderly man, disputing the purchase of a mysterious crystal. Margaret explains quickly to Rode that the rival fighting there is Professor Ball, Gustav's great historical nemesis. Before them, an immense and valuable greenish crystal shines intensely, radiating an aura of pure vitality that fascinates those present. But upon looking closely, Rode realizes immediately that beautiful greenish crystal is actually just a very well-crafted fake right there. ignoring the others. Gustav continues cursing his rival Ball as a vulture, accusing him of always trying to steal everything that catches his interest. Ball simply smiles in a sadistic and mocking way, replying that in the market, whoever makes the payment first is the one who has the right to take it. The proud Professor Gustav turns red with anger, shaking his fists, unable to contain his hatred for the eternal adversary's provocations. Rhodes steps closer and warns directly that vitality gemstone is nothing more than an ordinary wind or disguised on the table. The older man startles in surprise at the unexpected revelation and asks seriously whether his assistant is absolutely certain of that. The protagonist stares at him with total conviction and firmness, confirming with a focused look that the item is indeed a low-cost fake. Gustav changes his posture with malice, thinking that if it's trash, the rival will be spending a fortune in gold coins out of pure foolishness on his part. The older man then turns to the manager, demanding firmly that he tell everyone officially who the greenish ore belongs to. Totally pressured, the manager stammers while sweating coldly, stating that according to house rules, the product belongs to the first person who completes the payment. Ball celebrates by lifting the payment receipt, laughing out loud and mocking that the valuable supposed life crystal now belongs solely to him. But to everyone's total surprise, Professor Gustav starts laughing hysterically and mockingly, revealing himself to be extremely joyful right there. The rival and the staff member are left completely clueless, watching the older man's comical and unexpected reaction with total distrust. Ball glares at him confused, strongly suspecting the adversary's mockery, feeling that there is something very wrong behind that sudden joy of his. Gustav, as fun and ironically, congratulates the rival for having wasted a true fortune of coins on a mere worthless wind ore. All of Ball's arrogance vanishes on the spot upon hearing the mockery, and he widens his eyes in dread, while the manager also stands speechless nearby. The rival tries to disguise the panic by laughing loudly, and accuses Gustav of having gone completely mad for failing to accept defeat with dignity. He displays the glowing stone, stating that the immense vital energy and the mystic glow prove that is indeed a legitimate life crystal right there. The manager backs Ball up, asking for respect for the establishment and guaranteeing firmly that official appraisers proved the crystal's authenticity. Rhodes decides to step forward with total calm and tranquility and asks his proud professor not to worry about those insults. The young assistant states with total authority in his voice that the stone in the rival's hands is undeniably just a very common wind ore. The faces of Ball and the manager cover with deep hatred and fury at the boy's audacity in maintaining that outrageous accusation of fraud. The old rival glares at him with extreme hostility in his eyes, demanding to know with heavy contempt who he thinks he is to speak with such authority. The manager warns the boy harshly to moderate his tone, reminding him that accompanying the professor does not give him the right to defame the house's honesty. Gustav explodes in defense of Rhodes, declaring that his assistant's skills and knowledge surpass even his own capabilities. Ball scoffs with contempt, mocking that the once brilliant rival must have gone senile for having appointed a simple student as his main helper. He holds out the glowing green gem, challenging the boy to prove his supposed ridiculous accusation and explain where the immense aura of vitality comes from. The precious stone glows intensely at the tip of the rival's fingers, scattering lovely, sparkling residues of greenish vital energy through the air. Rhodes explains that the gem possesses an elven illusion spell to simulate the vital aura, and says that simply draining that force will reveal the fake. The protagonist instructs the manager to bring some ancient graveyard dirt, explaining that it will consume the spell, revealing the true item. Totally disconcerted and sweating from nervousness, the staff member confirms they have the ingredient and quickly orders a pot of it to be brought. The market security guard returns carrying a basin containing the dark, dense ancient tome dust requested by the boy for the test. Rhodes challenges him to drop the precious stone inside the dirt basin, guaranteeing that the truth behind the fake will reveal itself in a few seconds. Ball accepts the test irritated, demanding humiliating public apologies from both opponents if it is proven that the gem is indeed authentic there. He drops the glowing jewel right in the center of the dark dust basin, while everyone watches tensely the beginning of that drastic and decisive reaction. An intense, glowing greenish mist begins to emanate from the center of the basin, illuminating the glass shelves of the transaction laboratory. The rival celebrates hysterically and arrogantly upon seeing that the green crystal's glow remains incredibly strong even in contact with the dirt. Professor Gustav starts sweating nervously, fearing that his dear assistant has made a shameful analysis mistake in front of the rival. Margaret bites her lips, worried and distressed, not knowing what to do if that tense situation turns into a major disaster for them. The female teacher whispers desperately, warning about Gustav's unshakable pride, and states that a defeat there would be the greatest humiliation of his life. The young man reassures his master with total confidence, warning him that the true result of the fake will reveal itself in about 10 seconds. Ball brushes off the boy's prediction, insulting him and arrogantly guaranteeing that not even elves could fake such mystical brilliance. But suddenly the market manager's eyes widen, and he lets out a scream of complete terror upon spotting something inexplicable happening to the jewel. Before everyone's astonished gaze, the immense green light of vitality begins to quickly fade away, revealing a gray and opaque rock. Margaret is extremely shocked to confirm that it really was a scam, while the other nobles shout furiously, demanding to know who appraised the product. The crowd whispers in horror and mocks Ball for wasting a true fortune in gold coins on a worthless piece of junk. Ball turns completely red with rage and deep humiliation, his eyes bloodshot upon realizing the public shame he has just suffered. He screams furiously at the manager, accusing the entire establishment of being a bunch of scammers and of selling trash as a valuable artifact. Gustav bursts into hysteric laughter, mocking his eternal rival, and thanks Rode for saving him from falling for that shameful market scam. Consumed by humiliation and hatred, the defeated Ball throws the worthless rock to the ground and decides to leave the place immediately out of anger. He mutters between his teeth with deep hatred, mentally promising that public humiliation would not go unpunished for his rivals. While his rival withdraws, the establishment's manager bows in desperate apologies, sweating with terror in the face of all that commotion. In the distance, Ball's gloomy gaze shines with pure hatred, promising to decree the complete destruction of those who dared to make him feel ashamed. Back in the hall, Professor Gustav celebrates euphorically, claiming that he hasn't felt this good and happy about a victory over his rival in years. The elderly man thanks Rode very cheerfully and warns the boy that he can choose any ingredient from the shop on his laboratory's tab. Gustav coldly warns the manager, demanding that there be no more fakes there, and the employee swears in fright that everything was just an accident. The elderly man walks away with disdain, followed by the protagonist, while Professor Margaret just accompanies them in silence with a slight smile from afar. The manager watches Rode from afar, scared and intrigued, wondering where a young novice capable of surpassing all his appraisers came from. As they walk away, a mysterious and gloomy figure wearing an exotic armor watches them discreetly from a dark corner of the room. The trickster whispers furiously upon noticing that the boy has ruined his lucrative counterfeiting business and swears that Rode will have to pay with his life. With his eyes shining with malice, the villain plans to use Professor Ball's hatred as the perfect tool to eliminate the protagonist. From there, Ball hurries down the commercial building's staircase with heavy steps and stomping hard under the sunlight illuminating the city square. The elderly man walks away muttering furiously, unable to digest that his rival Gustav managed to find such a perceptive and attentive assistant. Besides losing a fortune in gold, he bitterly laments that a mere student caused him the biggest and most shameful humiliation of his life. Suddenly, the armored mercenary who was spying on them approaches the elderly man on the street, calling him by name and making Ball look back very confused. The warrior with a metallic helmet positions himself firmly in front of him, revealing himself to be one of the employees who works in the market security and commerce. Ball rants angrily, demanding that if he is to receive fair compensation for the fraud, they should send one of the establishment's general directors. The mercenary asks for calm with falsehood, guaranteeing that management was also extremely surprised by the case and has already opened a rigorous investigation. He lies in whispers, inventing the rumor that the appraiser of the fake gem had been secretly meeting with the young Rode over the past few days. Professor Ball's eyes widen, and he lets out a scream seized by an immense and uncontrollable wrath upon hearing the terrible suspicion of a setup there. He questions with clenched fists whether the mercenary is suggesting that the whole situation was an ambush orchestrated exclusively to rob him. The villain plays it off with a fake smile, claiming to be just a humble employee who, decided to share the gossip out of pure respect for him. He instigates Ball by pointing out how strange it is for the young Rode to be so sure about the fake, considering that the elven spell fooled even the most experienced mage. Faced with all that false evidence, the elderly man lowers his head and starts to laugh in a dark and completely psychotic way in the middle of the street. The professor concludes with hatred that Rode helped with the fraud and swears that his rival Gustav used the boy to pull off the lowest scam of his life. He focuses his freezing gaze on the disguised guard and directly questions what his real objective was in telling him that information. The villain replies by claiming that if the cheating story spreads, the exclusive commerce of the entire Nate Fair will suffer serious damage in the area. The elderly man flashes a smile of pure malice and concludes with satisfaction that both of them share the exact same and definitive common interest there. The trickster agrees in silence, sporting an evil smile knowing that his manipulation plan against Rode worked out perfectly. Ball walks away with firm steps and mentally swears that Gustav and his young assistant will pay very dearly for that public shame. With his eyes shining with pure hatred, he swears to make both rivals feel firsthand the terrible fury of anyone who dares to defy his mystical authority. Meanwhile, back on the streets of the fair, Rode's calm footsteps echo softly across the plaza as he continues scanning the surroundings of Nate. The boy follows the path, discreetly sensing through his sharpened senses that there are still mysterious eyes watching his steps at the fair. The trio of researchers continues walking calmly toward the ingredient stalls of the open market under the pleasant afternoon light. They approach a humble street merchant sitting on a rug full of artifacts and exotic plants displayed for trade on the ground. Gustav picks up and examines a red volcanic heart, but discards it, complaining harshly that the object is completely devoid of energy there. He points to a small dried shrub in a pot and disdains the material, claiming that that damaged herb has no commercial value whatsoever. Rode observes the merchandise with boredom and concludes that unfortunately that sector of the open market also lacks the materials he is looking for so much. However, the boy stops walking upon suddenly feeling a subtle yet incredibly pure and dense emanation of vital magic coming from a dark block. Upon examining it closely, he realizes with radiance that it is legitimate bloodwood, a rare and powerful material that forms under extreme conditions. The boy notices that the wood is fossilized due to age, but emanates a colossal amount of resurrection energy. But suddenly Rode's eyes widen upon sensing another incredibly dense energy signature hidden in that same location. His eyes focus on a black skull staff containing a glowing mysterious purple crystal embedded in the forehead. He realizes with intrigue that it is a fragment of nether ore, ideal for boosting his forbidden abilities. Disguising his interest, the protagonist holds a gem and casually asks the price of those worthless items. The merchant smiles, explaining cheerfully that the stones came from ancient tomes in the north and have no magical value whatsoever. The vendor charges only 5 silver coins per unit, allowing them to take any of the stones they want from there. Rode then offers 50 silver coins to buy out the entire lot of stones and the staff once and for all in the deal. The vendor accepts the generous proposal with a big and radiant smile on his face, extremely happy with the excellent deal. Without wasting time, the young assistant hands over the bag of coins, quickly closing the purchase of his new and valuable treasures. Margaret walks beside them, commenting in a discouraged tone that market visit hadn't been very productive there. Rode discreetly hands the piece of fossilized wood to Gustav, explaining that the item possesses immense vital resurrection energy. The proud professor glares at him grumpily, grunting that he knows what bloodwood is, and that that's just an ordinary stone, but the protagonist remains calm and firmly insists that the material really is the rare wood, but in a fossilized state. Intrigued by the claim, the elderly man adjusts his glasses and decides to closely examine the small piece of mineral he received from Rode. As soon as he touches the object, an immense and brilliant beam of red light erupts from the mystical stone, covering the elderly man's scared face. Margaret watches everything in complete shock upon feeling the dense and overwhelming emanation of vital aura radiating from the fossilized object. The elderly man's eyes widen in extreme astonishment at that radiant and pure brilliance, filling the entire environment around him there. He exclaims in pure euphoria upon realizing that the assistant was right and that it was indeed precious bloodwood. Meanwhile, the protagonist observes the purple nether ore fragment with a subtle smile, holding it in his own hand. The boy knows very well that valuable dark artifact will be the key element that will boost his necromancy skills. Later, under the dark cloak of night, lights turn on throughout the protagonist's imposing and sumptuous residential palace. He holds the 2 crystals, calculating that with the ore he will level up and that he will use the Tear of Death to restore his servant's strength. The loyal knight with eyes glowing in flames emerges from the shadows and kneels with deep respect before his revered master. Rode extends the gorgeous blue pendant toward him, firmly ordering him to use the object to recover his former power. The servant obeys promptly and respectfully as the amulet cracks, releasing an immense wave of concentrated power over him. A furious tempest of mystical flames and blue lightning completely wraps around the knight's body, starting his transformation there. The protagonist watches in silence the immense vortex of dark mana rising toward the ceiling, illuminating the entire room in blue. A sharp, metallic crash echoes through the room as the energy barrier shatters, releasing the servant's new and imposing form there. The violent explosion of mystical energy dissipates once and for all, scattering shimmering fragments across the stone floor. In the center of the room, the imposing knight is revealed wearing his majestic dark flame armor and with glowing eyes. Rode smiles with satisfaction upon seeing his warrior's imposing posture and celebrates upon noticing that the servant has reached the powerful advanced tier. With the warrior strengthened, the boy grips his purple nether ore fragment tightly, preparing for his own advancement. With a dry snap, the purple crystal is crushed in his hand, releasing an immense storm of dust and mystical sparks through the room. The protagonist's body begins to float lightly in the air as he absorbingly concentrates the pure energy of the dark ore. He focuses his mind, feeling the immense dark mana of the ore fuse perfectly with his own Necromancer energy flow. With a confident look, he celebrates the success of the spell that easily elevated him to the rank of a prestigious initiate magic mage. Rode ponders with satisfaction that now, with his new level and the reinforcement of his powerful personal bodyguard, nothing can stop him there. He sports a smirk, knowing that now he will be able to cast complex spells that were previously impossible to perform. The next morning, under a clear sky, a luxury carriage escorted by armed soldiers stops in front of the mansion's main gate. The carriage doors open and an imposing warrior in a military uniform steps out with firm strides under the gaze of the guards. That's Bruce, Kaya's older brother and a dreaded army commander who has returned to exact revenge for the clan's defeat. Kaya runs to meet him with a huge and radiant smile on his face, extremely relieved to see his powerful savior arrive just in time. Bruce glares at him coldly, mentioning that he heard about his shameful defeat in front of everyone and the breaking of the important Ashblade alliance. The blonde guy tries to justify himself by stuttering that the rival is an untouchable monster and desperately reveals that the partners are backing out of business. The imposing commander narrows his eyes thoughtfully, silently wondering since when someone so powerful has appeared in the northern region. With a freezing look, Bruce clenches his iron fist with monstrous strength, decreeing that the adversary's identity or tricks don't matter there. He swears with hatred in his eyes that Rode will pay with his life for messing with the clan's plans to take absolute control of the entire north. The commander turns around and calls for his most loyal servant to kick off the new and definitive attack plan against the young protagonist. That's Lex, the Empire's feared elite assassin known for his relentless coldness and for never leaving traces of his victims. Bruce praises the incredible skills of his elite assassin Lex, highlighting that he possesses a formidable strength far above the ordinary. The assassin Lex speaks up with his eyes shining intensely in yellow, ready to carry out orders and avenge his former colleague. Kaya sweats coldly upon feeling the assassin's oppressive and frightening aura, immediately realizing that he is on a completely different level. Lex coldly demands the file with all the information about the target, guaranteeing that he will make a point of exacting revenge for his pupil's death. Kaya replies with a confident smile, stating that he has already provided and prepared all the necessary documentation for Rode's assassination. He throws the folder containing the detailed reports with the information onto the table so the hitman can analyze every detail of the target. Bruce looks over the boy's file and flashes a sarcastic smile upon noticing that the opponent has become Professor Gustav's personal assistant. He analyzes that Gustav's prestige prevents direct attacks inside the academy or another simple ambush in the middle of the street against Rode. The commander concludes that the best action strategy will be to create a clever trap to lure lure the young target into their own territory. Kaya comes up with a Machiavellian idea, suggesting they send a formal apology invitation to the Ashblade family, bringing Road along with them. He laughs psychotically, planning to use the reconciliation as a facade to assassinate the rival dynasty's head and take their lands. The older brother listens to the evil proposal intently, realizing that really would be the golden opportunity to wipe everyone out at once. Bruce approves of the evil plan with his eyes shining intensely in blue, decreeing that the extermination mission will be executed with total perfection. The three villains smile sinisterly in the shadows, planning to dominate the north of the continent after annihilating all their opponents in the trap. The next day, sunlight illuminates the grand and gorgeous property where the prestigious Ashblade family dynasty resides. Eleanor approaches her dear grandfather in the office, curiously asking what the elderly man was reading with so much attention on that paper. The elderly man reveals that Kaya sent a formal apology invitation, offering a generous percentage of his family's industries as compensation. Eleanor smiles suspiciously and states with conviction that a hypocrite like Kaya would never apologize for real without a trap behind it. The elderly man agrees and places the golden correspondence on the wooden table to analyze response options very carefully. He agrees that the offer is just a cheap bait and directs the young woman to seek out Road to know her master's opinion on that meeting. Eleanor agrees with determination in her gaze, in a hurry to meet the protagonist and plan the next strategic step against the clan. Road analyzes the golden envelope while listening to Eleanor's account about the suspicious peace offer and millionaire compensation coming from the rivals. The boy flashes a slight sarcastic smile, finding their lie way too clumsy and too audacious to try to fool his intelligence. With his eyes shining intensely, Road decides to accept the invitation, seeing it as the ideal chance to wipe the entire Shadowthorn family off the map once and for all. The next day, a luxury carriage of the Ashblade clan waits in front of the palace, ready to transport them to the banquet property. The loyal knight greets Road with deep respect, cheerfully warning that the transport is fully prepared to start the journey from there. The boy dresses in refined gala clothes, adjusting his dark bow tie impeccably for the important evening event. Eleanor's grandfather confesses that he feels totally safe and calm knowing that Road will accompany them closely in that tense, noble meeting. He comments with disdain that the rivals don't even imagine that his health has been restored and swears he will make them regret that trap bitterly. As the shadows of night fall, the Shadowthorn Palace is heavily guarded by soldiers in dark armor and swords drawn. The employee greets them falsely, apologizing for the troubles of previous days and cordially inviting them to enter the banquet. The young Kaya bows forcefully before his guests, but celebrates mentally knowing that his final plan will triumph over everyone there. The blonde guy sports an evil smirk, knowing that his adversaries will never leave that place alive with Lex's mystical barrier and sharp blade. Kaya plans to take Eleanor as his possession after his family's extermination and swears to chop up Road's body to feed Nate's stray dogs. Road immediately perceives the strong, murderous aura emanating from the host and silently ponders how much in a hurry the blonde rival is to act. The noble guests are guided to the sumptuous main dining room under the yellowish and imposing light of immense crystal chandeliers. Bruce greets them cynically, apologizing for the mistakes made by his younger brother and proposing to seal definitive peace between the houses. The protagonist takes his seat at the table next to Eleanor, remaining completely focused and attentive to any strange movement in the room. He activates his sharpened senses and detects 7 energy nodes of a powerful mystical barrier hidden beneath the floorboards and on the hall ceiling. The protagonist looks calmly at the silver-haired young woman beside him and discreetly asks her to remain calm and relaxed. Fully trusting her master's skills, Eleanor breathes a sigh of relief and sports a slight smile, regaining control of her anxiety. Eleanor's grandfather toasts calmly with Commander Bruce, maintaining the appearances of cordiality before diplomatic transactions begin. The experienced elderly man gets straight to the point in the dialogue and questions Bruce about the practical details of transferring the assets promised in the letter. Bruce lets out a cynical laugh in the middle of the hall, claiming he had almost forgotten the most important and crucial part of that entire agreement. The experienced military commander's face distorts into a sadistic and completely insane smirk, finally revealing his real intentions. With two firm and loud claps, Bruce gives the agreed upon signal for his hidden guards to invade the main hall to start the attack there. The butler approaches carrying the official parchment of the supposed asset transfer contract on a silver tray to be signed. Eleanor's grandfather reaches out his hand to receive the document cautiously, keeping his eyes narrowed in a total state of alert. In the hall, suddenly, violent red bolts of forbidden energy erupt from the ground, abruptly activating the draped ceiling barrier in the dining room. Bruce laughs insanely, revealing that that paper is actually their death sentence and ordering the extermination of all his enemies right away. The experienced patriarch maintains absolute calm and simply takes a sip of his wine under the enemy's treacherous attack at the table. Suddenly, an absurd crash shakes the hall as mystical energies violently clash, releasing waves of dust. The treacherous soldier is completely shocked to realize that his physical dagger attack was repelled by an invisible magical barrier. Revealing his immense and unshackable strength, the elderly man stands imposingly from his chair, emanating a colossal golden aura of spiritual energy. Bruce is terrified up close to notice that the elderly man is not only cured, but also holds the aura of a peak specialist mage. He laughs out loud and mocks his rivals, revealing that a legendary grandmaster cured him and made him infinitely stronger for combat. Bruce warns that there is no turning back and furiously orders his elite warriors to charge forward with everything against the adversaries. The warriors initiate a quick and frenetic exchange of slashing strikes, illuminating the dining room with reddish traces of energy. The patriarch merely observes the adversaries' clumsy movements with total coldness, preparing to counterattack at any moment. The elderly man channels his powerful wind energy and challenges the young opponents, stating that he will teach them a painful and unforgettable lesson. At that exact second, immense purple ceiling circles activate on the hall ceiling, casting restrictive beams of light onto defenders there. The patriarch's eyes widen upon noticing the ceiling rune, and he realizes in shock that it is a terrible magic, nullifying barrier. He tries to cast his wind spells, but realizes with despair that his mana flow has been completely blocked by the enemy circle. Bruce celebrates sordidly, revealing that he spent a fortune on that nullification barrier to guarantee his rivals humiliating death. Eleanor screams desperately in terror upon seeing that her beloved grandfather has been completely immobilized and disarmed by Brucey's treacherous mystical barrier. Even without being able to use his magic, the experienced patriarch agilely dodges, proving that his physical skills remain very strong. The elderly man roars desperately, ordering Eleanor to flee from there immediately and save her own life with the help of her young master Rode. Eleanor draws her thin and sharp sword, trembling with terror as she looks at her grandfather cornered by the dangerous elite assassins in the hall. Crying, the young woman begs Rode to run away from there quickly, stating with pain and courage that she prefers to fight and die fighting alongside her beloved grandfather. With total coldness, Rode steps forward, blocking Eleanor's path, and calmly and imposingly orders her to take a step back. The young woman desperately warns that under the effect of that barrier, no mage can cast spells, and begs him not to sacrifice himself. The leader of the assassins glares at Rode with deep disdain while the young necromancer returns the gaze with an unshackable and frightening coldness. The assassin charges swiftly, delivering a slashing strike toward the boy and angrily wondering if he was the one responsible for Leanie's death. He roars, unleashing a powerful and swift punch toward Rode's face, swearing angrily to exact revenge once and for all in the duel. A deafening mystical crash echoes through the hall as Lex's fist violently collides with an invisible shield in front of Rode. The elite assassin recoils, startled and speechless, upon realizing that his lethal attack was blocked effortlessly by the young mage in front of him. Dark smoke dissipates, revealing the dreaded and frightening black, armored figure that manifested on the spot in total defense of his master. The powerful servant expels a terrible aura of blue flames and furiously decrees that the opponent must die for daring to raise a blade against his master.